AskGunQuestions.com is a website that we built back in 2007, and since then, for the last 15 years, people have been able to ask questions of simple to advanced nature, and we attempt to answer them in different ways over the years. Join us now as we start a new series to answer gun questions.
And welcome everybody to GunQuestions.com, or our Gun Questions show, Ask Gun Questions, where we answer gun questions. I'm all messed up. So sorry to Tony, first off, because I woke him up early. When I first woke up this morning, I texted him, "Hey, we doing the show today?" "Yeah, sounds good." And then I fell asleep and woke up late. So thanks to Tony for being patient. We're like basically an hour late on the show today. Thanks to anybody who's watching us live. Sorry again for being late. That's all my fault. I played around with a Monster energy drink the other day, and that screwed up my sleep schedule pretty good. I haven't been drinking coffee, so that's what I'm blaming it on, a massive amount of caffeine and the other chemicals they put in a Monster to keep you awake. So evidently I laid down earlier today and thought I was just going to lay there for a minute, and woke up at the time we were supposed to be starting the show. Anyway, that being said, sorry again for everybody for the lateness. Thanks if you do join us today. Tony and I were just kind of chatting offline about some junk that was happening. I'm going to call it race bait stuff on Twitter, or at least politically aimed stuff to get you blood boiling on Twitter. And we ended up chatting a little bit about what would happen if, ? And the question is, what would happen if you, the person answering the question, was picked to be the White House, whatever, we forgot the name of it, but the White House new house of, or the new position of, or what do they call it? It's not Tsar. Now they're calling them, I forget what they even call it.
Gun violence. Oh, yeah. The head of the gun violence prevention is not Tsar anymore. They stopped using Tsar.
Yeah, right. I think so. I was used to a drug czar, right? Because I always thought that was weird being in the United States and having czars. Like, come on, talk about communist. What the hell? It's a communist, or it's a Russian thing. But yeah, what do they? I think they just call it a committee or something. But anyway, Pamela's the boss, and I'm sure it's funded, and its goal is to get rid of guns or something, they say. But anyway, if you were put in position of that committee, who would you bring on to as your board? And Tony was already mentioning some things. One that you said, Professor Yamane, John Lott,
John Lott, Adam Kraut,
and then
Alan Gottlieb,
both from Second Amendment Foundation. But I was going to say, dang it, I had an idea, and I was like, oh, let's just go live and chat about it. And now let's think about it for a second, or try to remember what I was thinking. But I was thinking, you guys just had Derek on the Guns Gear podcast, Guns and Gear Review podcast. So Derek for sure, faster saves lives, and then those educational.
Diana Mueller.
Right. Well, what happened there? Okay. So yeah, exactly. Some of the organizations that are active and then doing stuff. So I was thinking maybe that would be my pick, is some of the people. I can't think of his name now. I'm drawing a blank.
What?
Head of the
NAGA, Phil Smith.
Phil Smith, thank you. Yeah, NAGA. Because they're just about to have their national convention, the second one, I think, or third one.
Yeah, that'd be the second one. Second. I thought it was
on the 25th in Dallas, and I thought that would be a good one, because that's an organization that's growing and is like current or whatever. But anyway, so that's what I was thinking. Maybe some of the heads of some of these organizations are actually seeing some growth and then doing some stuff. Of course, we both would agree on Maj, I'm sure. Boots on the ground. Stuff.
Now, the ridiculous thing with something like this, yeah, right. Something ridiculous like this is because you'd have to go with the optics. I mean, I'm going to sound ridiculous, but I'd have to go with the optics. And yeah, definitely it would be like Maj. It would be like Antonia Okafor. You know what I mean? It would be like Rhonda Ezell.
Yeah.
Ms. Rhonda Ezell.
Even if you go from that angle, like there is so many heavy hitters to take. Like there's so many people that are accomplished that are all over the spectrum of whatever you want to divide us up by, right? Like age,
Exactly.
like social class
We,
or something, like everything, right?
yep.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, so we've got a bunch. So
Yeah.
I think that might be an interesting thing. Just feel free to participate in that or make a poll or something. But I think that could totally be funny too. Like it would be a neat situation for a sitcom or something to have, the Office of Prevention, a blah blah blah, propaganda essentially, just not paying attention, and then bring in somebody like Tony. Like they go, "Oh, Tony, it says guns in his name, or something about shooting diversity. Sounds good. Like let's bring him on." And then before they know it, they give Tony a budget and a schedule when to come back or whatever, and he comes back with this group of people that actually can get something done. And what would be cool is it would be neat if that actually ever did happen, like accidentally, because then things would get accomplished, and before they could do nothing about it, would get accomplished, and then they'd either have to ignore it or say, "Oh yeah, we were on board with that the whole time." So you might actually, if that were to ever happen, it actually could, I think, have positive effect. Brady,
It would just be so funny though. It's like, what do you do with this? I don't know. He's brought in blacks, Hispanics, women, LGBTQ. Aaron Paulette.
People that have an
What do you?
actual, what do you say? Like they actually have communication with the existing gun industry too, not people that are just like, "Yeah, we picked these people and now we're, like going to cram the square peg into that round hole." These are people that are already part of the community doing stuff, thriving, and right from all the different buttons and check boxes they're looking for with that kind of.
Oh yeah, it would just know. You'd think I put together the NRA board that have so many people up there. It's like, wait a minute, he brought in 76 people. Yeah, it's my crew.
Because I'm believing that they decided to pull people like CNT is saying, don't mention Maj when you have a stream with Brady, they kick you out. And I'm assuming that happened to CNT. But even if that's the case, even if they pulled out, you'd have so many people on board that, you'd have things over like double covered. Like you'd have segments of the community like covered with multiple people. So anyway, I guess it was not the best thought experiment ever, but it was an interesting one. We didn't do a show last week because you went up to Pennsylvania. How did that trip go? I didn't have a chance to ask you.
Oh, it went really well. It was great because it's a fundraiser for CNJFO, Coalition of New Jersey Gun Owners. So we get up there, CNJFO, firearms owners. We get up, and what it is a round of plays, 100 rounds, and a breakfast. So they have like breakfast sandwiches laid out and other stuff laid out. We have breakfast. Everybody gets the safety brief. You get together in teams. You get on the golf cart, and I think it's like 18 or 19 different stations that you drive around to at this place that used to be a rock quarry that is now filled with water. So it's just really cool lakes with trees and lots of shade. And they have stations where you shoot clays that come from different directions. You shoot what they call running clays, which are clays that are shot along the ground and like rabbits. And it's really nicely done. You get on a team of 4 people. My team had 3. I bought my Winchester 1200 with like a 24-inch barrel. And the other guys used some Turkish over-under shotguns. Last year, when I was on, when we won, my team actually won, high team. One of the guys had a Beretta. She had a Beretta A400 or A300, I forget which, semi-automatic 12 gauge. And she also had a Benelli Black Eagle 2. So she had really nice shotguns. I was shooting that. And then my friend had a break-barreled over-under Beretta last year. And every time I broke it down, because, I had a freaking Winchester, man. I had a chance to shoot Berettas and Benellis. So I left my Winchester on the golf cart. So I'm shooting the really nice guns. But every time I broke his Beretta down to eject the shells, I would bang the barrel on something. So after the 3rd time, I just gave him his gun and said, I don't want to touch it again. But this year, I had a good time. I was with a 16-year-old that was actually on the clay team for that range. And I think either his father or his grandfather. And I had a great time telling jokes. And it was just a very fun day. And then after it was over, we went in, and CNJFO finally has, for the first time, led with a Second Amendment lawsuit against the state of New Jersey. And they're going against the gun a month scheme and firearms ID cards. They're trying to get rid of that and trying to make us a constitutional carry state. And they're also trying to get rid of the whole one handgun a month thing as unconstitutional and going against Bruin. So this is the first time that one organization has grown and raised enough money to actually lead a lawsuit instead of just participate in lawsuits put on larger organizations. So it's pretty important for that organization that came about in 2016. I think, I mean, I've been there with them from the beginning, even when they were talking about starting it. We had a conversation. They were like, we don't know if we can do it. And I'm like, well, you got to try. And they have. And this is the organization, CNJFO, that's been with me at every event. The guys you see in blue shirts, those are all CNJFO members or board members that were with me and believe in the work we're doing. So I thought it was really cool, and I was glad to be able to be with them as they raise a significant amount of money to help pay for these lawsuits. And they have a current fundraiser going right now. If you want to get in on it, it's pretty cool. So visit CNJFO _ on both Twitter and IG, or just CNJFO on Facebook, and you can get in on it and help fund the next fight that's currently going on in Jersey.
Right on. So I guess I misunderstood whenever you were talking about it. I didn't realize it was an event. So is the fundraiser part just the people that show up, or is it the show up part, like the, what do they call, like the culmination or the after part of the fundraiser?
So you pay for, you get tickets through them. So that's part of the fundraiser, because obviously, you know, they built not only the shoot in, they built the price for providing the food in, and, you know, of course, money to raise funds for what they're doing. Plus, they have raffles that they make money off of at the event too. So the whole thing was to raise funds. So it's pretty cool. And they actually sold out all the tickets for the event. So that was cool. I just like being there, and I like seeing, you know, our side succeed. And to have been able to witness from the very beginning, when it was just a thought, well, not even just a thought, they started it, but didn't know how it would work out. And I'm like, I didn't know how mine would work out either, but I did it. And they're doing it, and I'm really proud of them.
Yeah, very cool. And the range, it sounds like, is, I didn't realize there's something like that in New Jersey. We have they call it sporting clays. You know, there's trap, skeet, sporting clays, 5-stand. There's probably a lot more. That's the ones I know, because those are the ones we have here in Tucson. Ours isn't nowhere near as big as what you're talking about. I've been to quarries before, and I've been to quarries that are gun ranges, and those are super cool because they're kind of down. And at least from my experience back home, when you'd go to a quarry range, they were cooler because, you know, whatever reason, you jump down into a hole, it's a little cooler. And then, like you say, there's a lot of water because the quarries are, you know, pits and things. So there's like, they left some of it fill up with water, which is neat because back when I was a kid, you would shoot corn cobs and things, marshmallows that you would throw into the water with a 22. And because it was their own pit, you know, that nobody cared about the environmental bullshit of, you know, filling up a lake with water. But that sounds cool. We have to drive around in carts. Ours is like, I mean, you could take a cart down it, but it's essentially like walking down maybe 200 yards and walking back. And you're kind of shooting off to the sides like a tree or something, like you're shooting back and forth, but you're essentially just walking down a big 200-yard path and then walking back down it to the entrance. So that sounds like a lot more interesting. I don't know what to call it, because it sounds like it's more than just sporting clays. It sounds like a bigger, like a, maybe, I think there's a name for it, but like interactive hunting type of thing. Sometimes out here they'll have ranges where, I mean, different than shotgun ranges, but they'll have ranges where you just walk around with a bow and arrow and you're shooting at whatever they call those, like 3-dimensional targets. You know, look like a deer, looks like a rabbit, looks like a bear. Sounds like that kind of a thing mixed with 5-stand or whatever, not 5-stand, but sporting clays. So it does sound like a cool thing. So is that something that's in New Jersey? Is that something that's new, or has it been around for a while?
No, this is in PA, not Jersey.
Oh, okay. What am I thinking? Go to Pennsylvania. Okay.
Yeah, Lehigh Valley and Coplay. I'm just going through it real quick, but it's ski. No, what is it? But yeah, all I saw was that you just bust some clays at different spots, and it's beautiful because the core is full of water, so it just looks like you're shooting over some really cool lakes. And also, what is it, a cement quarry they call it? So you have the old buildings. Some of them are dilapidated. I think on purpose, really. Like some walls are still standing, and you just stand there and hit the button, and all of a sudden, a clay flies through the window or over the side of the building, and you got to blast it. It's really a lot of fun, kind of relaxing, and not that expensive. If it was in Jersey, it would cost a lot more money. So it's definitely worth checking out if you are within an hour to two of Coplay. It is worth driving to with your friends. Even if you don't have a shotgun, you can rent a shotgun, and the prices are ridiculous. Like $14 to rent a shotgun. Yeah, a round of clays is $51.
Oh wow!
Like,
okay. But that's a long, what do you call that, path or trail? Or are you talking?
Yeah, I mean you're physically driving around.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you bring your shells. They provide everything else. You get to go forward.
You're out there for a while, right? Like this is a good chunk of an hour or longer than an hour if you were just out there on a Saturday doing it.
Yep. And I mean, my fat butt's not gonna.
You cut out. You're not walking it. You said. Is he back? What happened? Did I get cut out? Give us some feedback. Something happened. I know he's having some trouble with his headset. So
A baby stroller.
Oh, there you go. I only heard was.
Oh, am I cutting in and out?
You went. I'm not gonna, and then we heard baby stroller. So I'm guessing a chunk got missed. Yeah.
Hold on. It's acting squirrely. All right. Can you hear me clearly now?
Yeah. You're good.
G-Webs, you hear me?
Yeah. You don't hear me?
Hello?
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, here we go. All right, cool. Yeah, all right. I had to turn off the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi was dropping in and out. Yeah, I'm not going to walk because it's long. I mean, it goes all the way around the place. It's only one direction you can drive, so you don't have incoming traffic, traffic heading towards each other. And they have, I think, 18 spots, but it's double. They have 18 of whatever clays we were shooting, and it looks like another 18 spots for, I guess, a different kind of shooting. I don't know what it was. This is my second time going, and I just didn't look around. I just went to where we, needed to go. So there's a whole another half of it. They have memberships, everything. It's fun. I'd recommend going, even if you've never shot clays, because it's just a fun way to have a good time. They have over/under shotguns, and they group you with people just randomly. At least at this event, they group you with people randomly.
Okay, that's kind of neat too. Kind of like golf. You go there by yourself or maybe two people, and they're going to pair you with other people because they send out 4 at a time usually.
Yeah. So I was on the cart with 3. I was on the cart with 2 other people, so it just made it a cart of 3. But it was still fun, and you'll eventually catch up with people if because we had one less shooter. So we'd always catch up with the group in front of us. They had one person, and that gives us another chance to see where the clays come from without either us being up there. So it's like, okay, that's where it is. All right, and that's where that one is. All right, cool. Then we get up and proceed to miss them.
Dude, that really does sound cool. I mean, I'm not a fan of shotguns, but I don't hate shotguns or nothing. I mean, I don't like 9mm for lots of reasons, but half of that is playing around. But shotguns, I never really give them much credit for much because I don't like them anywhere near as much as some people do, and that's all about because their shells are so large and they're useless. Like just such a giant thing to have to carry around. I just think practically they're a dumb thing. If you don't have to carry them around and you're just doing something like hunting or what, fine. That's what they're for. But anyway, I think they're always trying to cram them into other applications, and I'm not a fan of that. But that doesn't mean that kind of thing, what you're describing, sounds like the most fun ever. So I was going to say, let's chat about that a little bit, because this Ask Gun Questions is, the whole point is to answer questions that come in. And we do have 2 questions that came in since the last time we chatted. So we will be able to ask or answer real questions here in a bit. But the shotgun thing, I'm going to say, if this is the right way to say it, I suspect that we don't get a lot of shotgun questions because people don't play with shotguns because for a million reasons, right? People just don't get around to it or whatever. I don't think it has to do with anything where people have a problem with shotguns as much as I'm only going to buy one gun and it's not going to be a shotgun. So, same way they don't know nothing about bolt action and they're not going to know anything about flintlocks or any of that stuff, because unless you own one or you care about them, you're not going to do any research. You're just not going to care. So I think that the shotgun stuff gets neglected, certainly by me, is I guess what I'm saying. And I don't mean it to be neglected because I don't have a problem with shotgun. I just don't think they're practical or useful very much, but they can be a lot of fun. So as far as this, you haven't really chatted about this. That's why I wanted to bring it up. When you go shoot at a range at, let's say 25 to 100 yards, like a normal range, like most every range you're ever going to go to, of an indoor range, like 50 yards or something, 50 feet even sometimes, they're short ranges because they're handguns. Then you get to a standard outdoor range and you're going to have like 100-yard lane or something is usually your long one. And then you can find some outdoor ranges where you can really reach out there, shoot hundreds of yards or shoot even up to a mile sometimes, depending on, how large the range is. And those are different types of shooting. When you're shooting out hundreds of yards with a rifle, you're either laying down prone or you're sitting at a bench because you want as much stability as possible and consistency and all that. And you want your gun to be as stable as possible. People that are really good can shoot kneeling and standing with a rifle. But again, they're attempting to get as much rigidity and stability as they can. So that's a challenge, and it's a way to shoot, and it's fun and everything. You get to, I'm just going to use like black powder again. You shoot a black powder, and it's obviously everybody's got their own opinion, but part of that is going to be your ability to get around in there and shoot it. It's not the number one priority for people, but some people do appreciate that challenge because, we know back in the Revolutionary War days, people were able to shoot those things 3 times in a minute. That's insane. Like, I don't know anybody that even can load the thing in a minute, let alone shoot 3 rounds in a minute. So, and accurately, you actually pick up the gun and then shoot it, not just load it 3 times. But anyway, so I know I've never been to a range where anybody was going nuts trying to load a black powder, but that's one element of shooting a black powder. The other thing is most people don't pay attention. The black powders are oftentimes smoothbore. So shooting one is it's really not always a marksmanship thing as much as I'm really interested in shooting this mechanism or this machine. So anyway, there's this whole like different way of shooting black powders than there are shooting long range. And then if you get into something like a shoot house or something like that, where you have an opportunity to shoot in multiple directions as you're carrying like a rifle or a pistol, that can be really interesting for people. Does that apply to anything? In my opinion, no. Like, nobody is clearing houses except for SWAT teams and operators who have teams behind them for a reason. But in real, what do they call it? Like rules of engagement or like real life, it's just super dangerous to go clearing a house, even if you own the house. I know that most people are going to come at me with that because they think it's cool, looks great in training. So they just how to sweep and cut the pie and shit like that. But in reality, that's all just games. So if you want to play that like kind of stuff, go into a shoot house, awesome. And because it becomes dynamic, right? Because all of a sudden you're acquiring targets, you happen to position yourself and bring up a gun. That being said, it's different because you're moving around. Now, I could also say go to like a bowling pin match or some kind of a USPSA or IPSC game at like a local indoor range, and you'll be moving around. You'll be walking around stuff. But, and this is what I was leading up to, now you go out, and then you could go out and play skeet or trap or 5 clay or 5 stand, I guess it's called. And those are shotgun games where you're moving, you're moving at your hips, you're moving your shoulders. You might even take a different foot position in skeet or something to be able to shoot from the left and right when you're right up front. So you're really going to be moving around. But, and all this being said, these are all different ways to like interact with the gun and have a different experience shooting. Now you get to sporting clays. And if we've never talked about this before, if you've never had experience with shooting sporting clays, it has to be hands down the most fun thing you can ever do with a shotgun or with a gun, because you're like Tony said, you're essentially out on a golf course, but there's trees and things. It's not like a golf course where you have to be able to shoot a ball hundreds of yards. So there's not like the fairways or whatever that's called. It's just you're going out into a big area that's dedicated to this event or this sport, and they have essentially little stands or places set up, and they're going to have throwers, and shotgun clay throwers can do everything what Tony was saying. Like they can scoot them along the ground to simulate a rabbit or like a little piece of quail or a little quail bird running around before it takes off. You can get them that shoot away from you like a duck would shoot away from you when you startle it, or like a dove will shoot away from you. And you can also get them like, anyway, you can get these different throwers to shoot and throw in different ways. And then you can tell the thrower be random. And that's even more fun, because now you walk up and sure, the guy before you shot at a rabbit, but now you're shooting at a duck, essentially, or the characteristics of a duck. Right? But the thing is that these things can also set off multiples. Shooting 2 is no problem. I've seen some of them even have to shoot 3. Not like you're going to shoot 3, but you have the opportunity to shoot 3 and have to deal with this, what's the word, discrimination of targets? Or whatever the word is, like, because that's a thing. You know, you could be out hunting and 6 birds startle. You know, you got to being able to shoot 2 things really fast is awesome until 6 things appear in front of you. And then are you able to differentiate? Maybe that's the word I was looking for. But anyway, so all this stuff is really neat. And of all the things of shooting, if I could do something on a regular basis, it would be that. Like I would go out and just shoot sporting clays. If there was one close to me, I would definitely be a shotgun guy. I'd have pallets of shotgun, bulk ammo. And I'd be shooting that whenever I could, because it's just, I don't know what to say. It's like the most interesting. It's not like it's the most challenging. There's certainly things that are tougher. I think shooting distance, long range is tougher, but are like harder to accomplish. But even if you have no luck shooting sporting clays, you've been running around with a shotgun shooting in all directions, up and down, and challenging your head. And, I mean, seriously, it would be the funnest thing ever. Now, I would shoot it with an 18-inch pump gun, so something that I would use for defense, just to make it even more difficult than a big 26 long barrel, race gun. But anyway, I just think that was a thing worth chatting about. First, of course, go ahead and throw your 2 cents in there if anybody's out there. I know DJ mentioned he's got a quarry near him, and I've missed a bunch of comments, but I just thought that might be something to riff on here, just the way that the shooting sports are different from each other, and at least in my opinion, how shooting sporting clays is essentially unique. I don't think there's anything like shooting sporting clays.
I think one of the biggest injustices done to the shotgun is modern technique, and also idiots introducing people to firearms in a dumb way with a shotgun. So they'll give you a shotgun with buckshot in it when you're way too young and have zero experience, and that'll be your first shell you put in it. And I don't know how many stories we get from someone going, yeah, when I was 12, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, uncle, somebody gave me a shotgun, 12 gauge, and it blew me on my ass. And I was scared of them ever since. So that's one. 2, it's, it's a limited amount of rounds in it for when you use it for home defense. And I chuckle a little bit because I'm like, how many reloads do you think you're doing in home defense, regardless of what you're using? Not many, because when a home defender opens fire, people leave the home. No one's there for a shootout. Maybe if somebody's there to do a hit on you, that may be a longer sustained gunfire. But usually it's, oh, snap, somebody's home, get out. Then it's, oh, snap, the person home has a gun. And then it's, oh, my goodness, somebody's shooting at me. I'm out. So all of that leads to really how much ammo you carry on the gun is probably sufficient for shotgun use. But most people either affiliate shotguns with hunting or say it's some FUD stuff. We have other options now, but understand the AR-15 is not something that was used by most people for self-defense until the last 20 years or so in large numbers. Pretty much after the assault weapons ban sunset, more people started using it. Prior to that, you were still stuck with 10 rounds. Or 15 rounds, excuse me. So this AR-15 PCC thing is relatively new for home defense. Prior to that, it was shotguns and lever actions, and that's what people had. And you used what was on board. Many people don't know how to run a shotgun. A lot of shotguns aren't built for personal defense use in modern shooting stance. Their buttstock is too long, so you still blade like you're duck hunting instead of having a shorter stock that allows you to square up and take more of the recoil, straight on the way you can handle it. Also, when I watch people when they talk about using a shotgun for home defense, they're always looking at like, oh, I want a 3-inch Magnum, or I want, some Gucci ass, flight control. I'm like, bro, one, you don't need to spend that much money. Two, regular buckshot will do. Nobody's shrugging off buckshot in home defense distances, so you don't need a 3-inch buckshot. 12 gauge is good. I mean, 12 gauge is pretty much a premier self-defense shotgun round, but 20 gauge is fine too. It has less recoil, about 60% of the recoil of a 12. You still have the same capacity, but you have less recoil, and 20 gauge is just as good as 12 when it comes to, again, home defense and the correct load. So I think shotguns has a lot of it has an image problem because of bad intros by a lot of people, and other people just want to be way too gung-ho with it. I think it's very effective. And if you choose to use a shotgun for home defense, sporting clays is a great way to practice for a heck of a lot less money than going to the range with anything else, with more skills about hitting a moving target in random ways under different conditions. So if you take your handgun or rifle to the range, you're not going to get as many moving targets because no range can really have that happen for you shooting that many different directions because the distance that the projectile goes with both the rifle and the pistol. But when you're using a shotgun and you're shooting close,
let me just interrupt and say yet, but go ahead. Sorry. Like ranges will eventually catch up with what we want to do with our guns, but I'll shut up and let you go.
Yeah, so you won't be able to use projectiles. There are other ways to handle it. VR is another one. Virtual reality is another one, but we ain't there yet at most ranges. So you get to blast the shotgun. You get to do something that's not really defensive. So you're building the skills without looking at the silhouette of a person. And that mental thing is good for some people because some people still haven't gotten in their head that, yes, you're using these skills defensively, or these skills can translate to something defensive and would turn them off. Shooting clays, you're just shooting clays and having fun with your friends. Meanwhile, when you go home, you can take that 24-inch barrel off and put on the 18-inch barrel. So the very same shotgun you just finished shooting 200 rounds through yesterday, loaded up with buckshot, and you're ready with a defensive tool that you've steadily put a diet of birdshot in your pump shotgun or your semi-automatic shotgun. So I think that's a pretty cool thing. Many ranges don't allow you to use the 18 or 20-inch barrel on their range. I think this one also has one that you need a full-size barrel over 22 inches on your shotgun. And like I have my Winchester, and it has a 20-something inch barrel, both of them do. And then I have a Stevens that has a swappable barrel, so it has like a 22-inch barrel, and it also has an 18-inch barrel. And that one I can just swap out. I'm using the same gun, same length of pull, everything, same loading as I would be using on the clay course. So I like shotguns for self-defense. I think they're a very good option, especially indoors. You can change the load, depends on where you live. So you can take it down to number 4 buck, and you have lighter pellets. I think number 4 buck is like 25 caliber pellets, but you have more of them in a tighter form, and they're lighter weight. So they may stop if you have a miss or if you have a pass through. More than likely, you hit the person, it's not going to blast through the room and blast, through more walls than that are there. Even though I think overpenetration is something that exists, but it's not as big of a deal as people say, because I've heard of one time someone's actually been hit by a round that overpenetrated once. And this is stuff I look into as part of another podcast I was on. So,
Well, and if there was
so-
overpenetration, like if there was a scourge of overpenetration issues, the antis would be going after bullet, whatever they would want to call it,
oh
like
yeah,
power or something they'd come up with, right? Like that has too much bullet power. They haven't done that
yeah,
yet because
they've come up with
it's not
something
on their radar.
ridiculous.
Yeah. But I use them as a barometer
So-
sometimes. Like, oh, if that was really going to be an issue, wouldn't we be attacked by it? Like, wouldn't that be easy for them to pick up, low hanging fruit for them to pick up? So that's why a lot of our like apprehension or like a lot of our like hesitancy to do something in our culture, like as gun owners our whole lives, a lot of times, like carrying off body. Don't carry off body. Somebody's going to take it from you and use it against you. Okay, in theory, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But in reality, how many girls are carrying it off carry, and how many of them are having it used against them? I doubt that many. Like as many as somebody's going to steal their purse and hit them with it anyway. You know what I mean? Like if somebody's bound to take something from you and hit you with it, that's going to happen anyway. So I'm just thinking that a lot of these cautionary things we have are because it sounds cool the same in a CCW class, but in reality, like you say, unless you're doing something like what you guys did with which one was it with Rob? I forgot what you called that one. The the self-defense gun stories. Was that what it was called?
Oh yeah, self-defense gun stories. Yeah, with Rob.
Where you guys literally just looked up stuff every week and talked about stuff. Like again, like if there was concern, then you would be talking about it on a regular.
Anyhow, exactly. So one of the things about working with
bad rap, but you're making good points. I'm still not changing my mind because my thing is with shotguns is you made a lot of you addressed a lot of my points that I usually have. My other one that's still withstanding though is that because of the pattern, because I agree with you, 20 gauge over 12 gauge for sure inside your house, for sure inside your house. Problem is, and I know that I'm applying my situation because I live in a place where if I go outside, there's other houses around, but they're not next. I'm not in a townhome. Like I'm not in a city where the other house is like adjoining my wall, or I'm not in apartments or anything like that. I'm also not in like a ranch situation where the next house is, not even in sight. I'm just in a normal area. But what's a realistic scenario? Kids are going around and busting into houses to cause some damage, or maybe we're in a situation where the rule of law has been weird because of some stress, and that's not even like theoretical anymore. We lived through a time when essentially most of the police forces said, if it's not above, if it's not this tall, don't call us. If it's not above $1,000, don't call us. If it's not violence, don't call us. If it's threat to property, don't call us. So if you're in a situation like that, that's where, I'm like, okay, 12 gauge, 20 gauge. Well, now if you have to go outside, now 12 gauge becomes a lot more interesting. Even though it's a slight difference, I want the advantage. But inside, I'm gonna stick with you. In all those situations where you're not going outside, 20 gauge is smaller, but it's also fewer pellets. And I guess what I'm saying a long time here is to get to, unless you're using like a deer thing, which only has 3 slugs or something, or few. You got the concept of a pellet going somewhere in your house, and you're either breaking something expensive, or probably not hurting anything, but now you're defending yourself, and you didn't want to, you had to, but now you also broke your TV or your expensive computer or that picture that matters to you. That's the part that I just can't get behind, the shotguns in a house, because it's your house. If it's shotguns out in the woods, I'll care. Who cares? Who cares where those extra rounds are going or those extra BBs are going? I'm just concerned about those extra BBs in a house. And then, honestly, just to be gruesome about it, like it's messy. Like, one round and somebody drops, unless you do something gross, like it's probably going to bleed out inside of them. But a shotgun can rip a piece of you off or just be gross. Now you got just gross stuff in your house. And that's the stuff nobody thinks about. But like the CCW insurance, one of the big factors between them is if they pay for cleanup after a scene. And they call them crime scene because they make a big mess. And there's whole industries of how to clean all the gross off of people. Everything inside of us is gross. And if you think something gross comes out of your dog, we're full of way more than that. And if you're popping a hole in somebody and they fall over, they're going to leak some of that out. But if you remove a part of them, then all those pieces go around and it just becomes gross. So anyway, without getting more gruesome than that, that's those things. I'm still not a big fan of shotguns, but again, I'm talking about fine hairs at the end of a bunch of ifs. Like I'm not talking about every situation by any means.
So when I talk about shotguns, because I work with the department, leave it at that, and they have to qualify once a year or twice a year with their shotgun also. And all, for the most part, 2%, they hate it. Meanwhile, they all pass pretty much with 100% on the shotgun qual because of how a shotgun is built. But there's pros and cons to it, and I always point them out because people are like, oh, you love shotgun. No, I just think there are pros and cons to all of them, from shotguns to handguns to PCCs to rifles to carbines. And I'm like, they all have pros and cons. Depends on how you use them, where you use them, where you're from. You know what I mean? The area you live in, what you have to contend with, and what the threat level is.
Exactly.
And I'm like, because so I won't dismiss any of it, and also your level of training with it. Now, my mother uses a 12 gauge that I gave her because that's what I had at the time, and I know for a fact that there's pretty much a rabbit's foot for my mom. It's not even real as it tells me. But I gave her something that was effective, that was almost intuitive to use. It's a very barrel single shot. Oh man, your mom's going to get killed in the streets. No one's hanging around after a blast of a 12 gauge, especially when you didn't expect a 70-something-year-old woman to have anything. 2, my mom is not going to train with anything. That'd be a lever action shot. That'd be a lever action, a semi-automatic, a hand. She's not going to. She's just not. And I'm not going to argue with my mother. So I gave her a thing. I took her outside. I loaded it with birdshot, which is one of the advantages of a shotgun. I was able to load it with birdshot and get her to just blow up water bottles with it. And she had fun doing that. More fun than she would have trying to learn how to operate an AR-15 in her 70s. Loud noise, concussive, all this stuff.
You're gonna have to sit through a lecture and then have to deal with this thing that weighs 9 pounds and is whatever 4 feet long, and you're fiddling with it. And even if it's shorter than that, it's still got a bunch of different. Think about them. There's at least 3 switches you have to deal with. If you don't count the trigger, but you've got the safety, you've got the bolt release, and then what's the other thing? There's another thing on an AR. Can't think of the bolt release.
Charging you got a charging handle.
Oh yeah,
charging handle, mag release. Safety.
Oh, the mag release, mag release. So, all those things aren't necessarily, not even on the same side of the gun. Like either you bought your gun and you figured out that manual of arms, or everybody else in the world grew up with bolt actions and pumps and figured out an AR-15. But AR-15 is goofy compared to everything else out there. So if you know the AR-15, that just means you grew up with the one goofy thing and everything else seems different to you. But everybody else grew up different. Or with movies that, lever actions and everything. There's nothing on any of these guns. Maybe a safety, but otherwise there's triggers. So yeah, that you don't think about it when you're fluent in this stuff or competent with this stuff. You don't think about it from that new person's perspective. But here's this complicated thing. Let's sit down and have a lecture. Let's go to the range and let me tell you a bunch of things not to do, just so you don't pinch yourself in it or push the wrong button in the wrong time. The manual of arms is still a thing you have to figure out. Knowing there's 3 buttons is one thing. When to click them buttons is a whole nother thing. Then there's the competency of being able to hold this thing with a pistol grip and a forearm. And they make us, because of the laws, because of NFA, we have to make these things 2-handed. So there's nothing to facilitate unless you really apply. There's nothing to facilitate a smaller or inexperienced person just holding this thing like they would anything else comfortably. And then on top of all that, now try to shoot it accurately. And you're trying to shoot a freaking thing that's as small as a pencil. I mean, how big is a 22? You have to shoot something as small as a pencil with a little bit of recoil in this 4-foot-long thing, or 3-foot-long, whatever it is. Add a piece of paper downrange, and now you're in a new environment. So yeah, compared to taking somebody out to, like you're saying, a single shot shotgun at water bottles outside, and you're you and your kid, night and day difference. And that's. I don't think anyone's ever had that conversation. I've never heard it in all the time I've been talking when we talk about what's the best gun for self-defense. As far as like what you had, the experience of the new shooter being, being introduced, I guess, to the gun. Yeah, there's such a difference between those 2 scenarios. And then it even gets worse with a pistol. An AR-15 is actually easier, I think, than a pistol, which can freak people out because it's so small.
Again, the thing with understand a lot of these conversations are had between young people that have only younger people, with all their physical attributes and no ailments or handicaps, discussing it with other younger people who maybe either haven't trained people or only trained people in that age group or younger. Being a firearms instructor and having a large following of females and people that are older, it's really weird, my Venn diagram, because of the advocacy, the work, who I have come to my, not only events, but came to my training classes, was from 10 to 80. And I was able to see some things, especially when people weren't. They wanted to be into firearms, but they definitely weren't going to train a lot. So for me, if you're telling me you're getting something for home defense, but the person is not going to train a lot, ain't going to shoot it a lot, and probably aren't going to practice much, and we know all these things you could do better, but you could also eat healthier and exercise more too. So let's leave that alone. Live in reality. A long gun is better than a handgun in those situations because they're less likely to point it at something that they don't mean to point it at if it's longer. 2 hands and a shoulder are better than someone that picks up a handgun who, again, hasn't shot it much. And people tend not to drop things in their offhand when they're using a hand, or they point with one hand. They're not hitting anything, especially if they don't practice. Being able to pick up a long arm, stick in your shoulder, and have 4 points of contact makes you more accurate. And you will drop your bag, your purse, or whatever when you grab the shotgun, when you grab the rifle, carbine, a PCC, because you have to fill both hands when you shoulder this. So I look at it that way. I just looked at all the negatives and the positives and put it together, and with what I had available. Now, if I would have had, I think Rossi makes a double barrel shotgun. They call it a coast gun, but it has a 20-inch barrel or 18-inch barrel. If I had one of those, I would have gave it to her because 2 barrels is better than 1. And it cocks on close, so it didn't have a hammer. That was pretty cool. That was maybe the only better option, in my opinion, would be a double barrel that cocked on close. But with a single shot with an exposed hammer, she can see how gun is ready to go. Hammer's cocked back. My mom was a fan of Westerns, so she understands cocking a hammer from, lever actions she watched or revolvers that she watched. And I tied the two together when I gave her training, had her do everything. And then when it came to unload, she said, "What if I don't have to use it?" I'm like, "Mom, we out in the country. Walk outside and send her around into the dirt, into the woods." I was like, "Don't worry about trying to drop the hammer on a live round on a single shot." You know what I mean? I'm like, "Nope, we have nobody around us on 2 different sides. And just put it in the dirt at a further distance." So that's how I trained my mom to run a shotgun. Is she totally prepared to hold off borders in case of the apocalypse? No. But does she feel better about being able to safely defend herself? And does anybody want to walk in on this old lady with a 12 gauge? Not knowingly. So I think I did as much as I could with what I had with the student that I had that's my mom. Because I'm not going to correct her for so much before she gets out of my shit. Reminds me of where I am in the pecking order.
All right, with that, I'm going to say let's switch topics because we happen to have 2 questions that came in, and we're actually getting a bunch of good comments from people showing up live. So, yeah, we kind of started out with shotguns there, and we ripped on it for a bit. But the next one, the question that came in from the website, and DJ posted a link to that earlier. Thanks for that. It looks like it's going to take up more than one comment, but I think StreamYard will chop it up into pieces for us so I can show it all on the screen here at some point. The question comes in: I recently purchased my first handgun, but I have fired many before this, except the one I bought has no dots on the iron sights. I always thought you're supposed to aim with your target behind the center dot on the front sight. Is this not the case? And should I actually aim to the top of the front sight? If that is true, would there be any issue with painting my own dots on my other sights to make it easier to sight quicker? And I probably didn't keep up as I was typing that, or as I was reading, so I was reading from the other screen. But that's an awesome question. That's a new person to guns question, and I've never I guess if I had photographic memory, I might have heard this in a CCW class, because this is the kind of question that would come up in a CCW class here in Arizona from someone who's a new shooter. But I have never heard this question asked before. So thank you for asking that one. And go ahead, Tony, if you want to address it. You're probably faster at it than I am.
One, it's your gun. You can do what you want. And if having a high visibility front sight, because that's usually, they make it easier to see with the dots. That's why the dots are there. You can line them up, I guess, but what you're really doing is lining up the front sight into the space, the rear sight, equal light, equal height in both sides of the front sight as you peer through the rear sight and focus on the front sight. Then you target focus in the self-defense scenario. Practice a lot and you will see your front sight in the self-defense scenario. Don't practice a lot and you'll be looking at the threat. But if you apply fundamentals pretty much out to about 10 yards, you can still point shoot a human being in a defensive situation. So not all is lost. So, yeah, the dots are there as references, but before there were dots, they were playing black sights ever and ever and ever. But if it helps you see, paint it with some models paint. Put down a little base, pick up the little tiny things of model paint, pick up a white one, spray everything, maybe very clean or use alcohol or whatever to get the oil off it. Paint it with a white base, wait for that to dry, and paint it with red or whatever highly visible color you choose, or you just leave it white. And that would allow you to see the front sight quicker and easier. If you want to step that up, you can also use a fiber optic front sight. You can replace it if you can replace the sight on your firearm. You can replace it with a fiber optic front sight or even a brass bead. That's what they used back in the day, brass or gold beads. Again, just because it gives you more light in between the rear sights. I like keeping my rear sights dark. I'm not trying to line up 3 dots, but that could be you. Glock comes with the little cup in the back, little white cup in the back, and you line that up with that. My gunsmith just turned my dot around on the rear side of mine, so I just saw black, and I kind of dig that. So the world is your oyster as long as you do something that's advantageous to yourself. Do what you want. Choose however setup you want to on your gun.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. It's consistency. Like the sight is there to be an indicator of your whatever, your trigonometry, your angles, whatever. So like Tony said, there's no right or wrong. It's just the way that they've built these things. Some people, and then I think what you maybe didn't touch on is, again, if we talk about different styles of shooting, if you're trying to shoot a Texas Star, that's a piece of metal with 5 points on it, and as you hit each piece of metal, they fall off of the thing, and it turns chaotic because of the way gravity interacts with this big spinning wheel with 5 heavy pieces on it that you're removing weight from. There's some strategy on how to shoot this thing, but essentially if you shoot one of the plates off of his Texas Star, it starts to spin, and by the time you get to the last or second to last plate, that thing can be spinning pretty chaotically. And when you're trying to sight in on something like that with a pistol, it's just super difficult. Most people can't even do it, let alone do it quickly. That is a different type of sight, right? Like maybe an XS big dot would be ideal for that, like just a big white dot up front and almost like a V in the back, a slight V in the back. So it's like super fast to acquire. Some people hate that because if you try to shoot 5 bullets in the same hole at 20 yards, you're not going to do that with an XS big dot without a lot of practice, right? So I think there's application of, these sights are made for different things. Now there's people that have issues with sight period, right? There's people that have issues with color differentiation. There's people that have different issues with sight focus at different ranges, right? So you can have far-sighted, whatever the other one is. Is it short-sighted? Far-sighted or not? You got color issues, and then you've got contrast. So there's all kinds of things that can go on with our brain-eye interaction. So some of these sites are there to deal with those. And then, like colorblind, I don't know if anybody's ever brought it up, but there must be people that don't see the pink ones, so they buy the yellow ones, and vice versa. Or people that, the reason they make red and pink and purple and yellow high vis cones or whatever they're called, the little filaments, It's because everybody doesn't like the same colors. Some people like different colors. Some people are doing it because they want their gun to be pink or whatever, but other people are doing it because they see pink, in a better contrast. So anyway, I think for all these reasons, the sight is only there as an indicator. It's your machine. It's your you operate that machine. And we don't talk about it very often, but I think we all know old guys that don't need any sight on a gun. They shoot so much, like Miklik, that guy. I bet you don't need a sight. Up a gun and for the most part get it closer than most people because he's fast, but he's also an accurate shooter. He's been a competition shooter for a long time. So it's to behooves him to be able to just shoot down a barrel instead of shooting down whatever sights he picks up. So I'm just assuming somebody that shoots like that, like tens of thousands of rounds a month type of thing, they probably don't care about sights anymore. Like they don't, or at least they don't have any preference on sights anymore. They're just going to shoot it the first time, figure out where that gun shoots. I mean, that's what I do. I'm no expert, but I don't care about sights anymore. Like and I've picked up as a range safety officer, whatever you call, like the guy who helps at the range. And whenever you're a gun guy helping at the range, everybody's like, hey, you want to shoot this gun? You go, yes. So I've shot a billion different guns. I'm not going to touch a sight when I pick up somebody's gun to shoot it twice, right? You shoot the first time, you figure out where the bullet went in relation to the sight, and it's called Kentucky windage or something. You just adjust and shoot a bunch of times, and you hit exactly what you're aiming for. So that's how I am with sights. Of course, if it's my gun, I may adjust the sight so I don't have to do Kentucky windage on it. But I mean, I don't know about you. I've owned a lot of guns, probably more guns than a lot of people, and I haven't ever had to change sights very often. Anyway, that being said, I think everything Tony said is 100%. Like, do you figure out what you like and do it? I would say the only other advice is rent guns, shoot other people's guns, take the advantage, take the opportunity when somebody says you want to shoot this, because one of the things you're going to see is sight picture. You're going to experience recoil. You're going to experience the dwell or the what do they call that? The recoil impulse of the gun, like how the gun operates. An AK-47, a big metal and wood gun that has this huge thing that happens between your face and your shoulder is different than an AR, which is a plastic and aluminum tube, which has a little bit of weight going between your face and your shoulder, or up in front of your face. Oh yeah, but much up in front of your face to your shoulder. So they're different types of guns. And a Sten shoots so much different than like a Thompson. So in a bar, like a full auto 30-06, like that's a totally different recoil than any other gun you're going to shoot. So anyway, that part of shooting a gun. And then if we talk about handguns, shooting a 22 revolver is different than shooting a 500 revolver, right? We know there's the extremes, but there's so many different like nuances in between. And the HKs shoot differently. They're not Browning designs. Like their barrels and their frames are different to each other. Like a Makarov, where the barrel is attached to the frame, is going to shoot different than any gun we're used to that uses the Browning design, where the barrel, how do they call that? Cam off? I don't know what it's called. Like it disengages as it's recoiling. Like that's the invention that Browning came up with, and it allows guns to shoot kind of smooth. If you shoot a lower caliber, though, you can just attach the gun to the frame, and it doesn't bother anybody. It's like 380s and 22s do that all the time. There might be some 9mm that have attached barrels at this point. They're big enough, right? But anyway, that kind of stuff is so much different between guns. Take that opportunity, and one of those things is sights, and you're going to be able to see why people have these endless discussions on sights. I don't invalidate the discussions. I'm just sick of hearing them. Like I never participate in them because I've been in a billion. I mean, since I was a little kid, I remember being in 6th grade, sitting around a lunch table talking about if a channel sight is better than the new fiber optics that are coming out, and if it's better to have a fragile sight or a sight that can't break off, and are any of them better than standard sights, and then the Glock sights, they're made out of plastic. So as nice as they may be, what good is having a piece of plastic if you're in a real situation? Literally, you can drop that gun and break the sight off. Still works, but if you're depending on that sight. Anyway. The next question from the outside, from the website, is from somebody who may or may not be here right now. The question is, do 40 caliber pistols wear out faster?
Oh, okay.
I think it's 3. It's because they just bought one, I think, or they own them, I'm sure. But I know, but they might have just bought another one. But I know that, again, I don't know if I've heard this conversation come up specifically ever. Definitely never heard the question asked, but so it may have come up in like roundabout way if we were ragging on 40. I wouldn't rag on 40, but if other people were ragging on 40, but I think it's another interesting question. So how would you answer this one?
Okay. Most. Okay. Yes. Short answer. If you want to bail and you're on the time constraint, yes. For most guns, most firearms that were developed and used 40 are just 9 millimeters. They beefed up a little bit, if at all. The HK USP is the only one I know off the top of my head that was built to handle 40 from the ground up, like tens of thousands of rounds of 40 without going down. So that's why it is such a dope ass gun when it comes time to launching 40s. Everything else about it, people don't like. Oh, it's a big gun for, how many rounds of hole, yada, yada, blah, blah. It's a powerhouse when it comes to running 40. If I was going to get a 40 like right from jump, and that's what I'm getting, and I'm going to put a lot of rounds through it, and I know that I'm going to, then that would be a cool move to pick up one of those. Or pick up a 10 mil. Pick up a 10 mil and shoot 40 in it. Oh, but it'll do jump for the thread. Shut up. It'll work. We do it with Glocks. We've done it with 1911s from Rock Island, and they just use 40. But what they do is create a ring around it like 38 does in the cylinder when you load 357 Magnums. If you load 38s, at the end of the cartridge itself is going to be where the powder burns, and it's going to leave a crusty little ring, small ring, but it's going to leave a crusty little ring at the end of that. So when you try to put a longer cartridge in, like a 10 mil, it's going to get stuck on that buildup of carbon where the 40 cartridge
ends. I thought you were talking about
on
the cartridge or on the case. You're talking about like in the chamber itself, so you have to clean it or
something. In the chamber, it's going to get that little crust on it, just like it does in the cylinder in the 357 Magnum when you use 38s, and you'll have to clean it prior. That's what we learned. So, yes, most guns going to wear out, but most people are never going to shoot in the 40 wear a gun out regardless. So it's not a big worry, but as an academic question, yeah, most of them will. I'm going to reach out to, because very few people make 40s now. Very few company makes 40s now. I think 40 is a good cartridge for what 40 did when it first came out. It's still better at area penetration than 9mm is because it's got more, ass in it. It's moving at a faster velocity at a higher bullet weight. And it never stopped doing what 40 does. 9 just got better at what it does, but it's still only just as good as 40. It's not better.
Yeah, let's not forget that there was the 45 ACP and then the guns that eventually turned into Nazis made, the 9mm. So they got this old crusty gun or caliber from the 1900s, 1909 or something, when that thing was made. Mm-hmm. And then it essentially sucked because it was ball ammo. It was just whatever they could make. And I'm sure I would 1,000. Well, okay, it was made by German, but I still think that because it's a military round, part of the equation was the least amount of material we can use so we can make the most of them, because that's part of military characteristics, right? Like it has to be, we have to make a lot of them. We only have so many resources. So let's not be wasting ammo on our enemy. We need exactly this much and not an ounce more or a gram more. So they came out with this thing just to do the job. So that's what Tony's saying. Like for a long time, it was just adequate, and it was smaller around than a 45. So it had higher capacity. Therefore, people like the idea of like, oh, I'm going to miss a bunch of times and I'll have more rounds. Or if there's a bunch of people hanging out, whatever, like they decided to have more rounds better, right? But then it sucked. So, and people didn't want to carry around a 45, so they came out with the 40, right? Because the 9mm sucked. It's not like the 40 failed. It's just that the 40 was too much for people where that's too much for, and that's fine. Not everybody can shoot every caliber. So it did have you have to be this high, or you have to be this tall, or in other words, you have to have this wrist strength to shoot it, and that's fine. Like it didn't have a really wide range of wrist strengths or something. But all that happened is 9mm said, the companies that make 9mm, I guess, said, oh shit, if we fiddle with it a little bit and do what some of the hand loaders and wildcatters have been doing, and now make that a production run, now the 9mm is slightly different. It's slightly better, quote unquote. Well, it didn't make it better or bigger. It didn't make it faster. It just tweaked it a little bit so that the numbers people are looking for. And everybody was like, okay, that works. We don't have to buy new guns. Good to go. Because a bunch of cops had them. So, or police departments had them. So anyway, I think that's great. It's not like 9mm got super good or anything. All it did is got like a little bit better, and 40 was just too much for people, and 10mm is way too much for people, and 45 has always been too much for people.
There you go. I mean, that's telling them 100%.
10 and 40 are hard to shoot because they torque. At least that's how I always explain it to people. Like they twist your wrist, so you really have to be ready and want to shoot something it's like sitting on a buck and bronco. 45 is just like riding a horse. It doesn't. I mean, if you can handle straddling a big thing and sitting on it for a while and being uncomfortable, 45 isn't going to hurt you. It's just a push against you, and it's a little bit bigger push than a 9, but it is not that big a jump to go from 9 to 45. The big jump is the gun's way huger. The gun itself is heavy, and they never made them small. They never bothered. They were making them in 1900 for people that lived till 30 years old, and they were smaller people, but way more muscle than we have nowadays. We sit in front of computers and type all the time. Back in the day, they walked literally everywhere, right? They were just stronger people back then. So for them, a 1911 wasn't a big deal. Nowadays, 1911, you might as well ask people to carry around a cinder block, right? So I think, anyway, that's my...
I got a different opinion. I got a different opinion on that. I think 1911s were always heavy, and people sucked at shooting them even back in the day because the instruction was ass. Sure. The instruction was one-handed shooting. It had minuscule sights. And then when you throw in most people who shot it were in the military, and the military, depends on what years, was trying to pump as many people through as possible, especially during the war or push up to the war when it was expanding. They had shitty instruction. So when they got out of the military, and we're talking about an entire generation of men getting out of the military, 45 didn't make the move over to police departments as police departments grew because most dudes didn't know how to shoot the dang thing and got crappy advice and instruction. So that's, in my opinion, that's why the 45...
And you're right. But I think it's also because criminals weren't wearing armor or hard. You could stop a criminal with a 38 or a 380. You didn't need a 45 for criminals. They weren't like in the military, shoot through something or around, through armor or like through a wall or something, which you'd have to do once in a while with a 45. You just didn't need all that, in New York or, Los Angeles.
It was good enough. And then in 1935, when they came out with the 357 Magnum, that worked too. It was in the revolver. It was in the double axe revolver where the hammer didn't have to be cocked. I mean, there was a lot of ignorance going on. Training was not better back in the day. Matter of fact, it was much worse. Handgun training was much worse than it is today. I mean, truly, the ignorance we have today is almost willful. That we have so many different firearms trainers as compared to back then. It's almost willful, the ignorance we have today.
It's a culture, right? We don't value or we don't place the importance on it as a culture, so it doesn't get whatever. The results are no one pays attention to it. But I agree.
Nope, not at all. Oh, I know what I'm doing. No, you don't. But yeah, and I agree with you, man. The 45 in what it was meant to be shot at, which is a 1911, all still 1911. Heck, even the aluminum one, or I've shot the scandium frame Smith & Wesson, a 1911 something. Scandium frame from Smith. It is fun to shoot. It is well made. They did a great job, and I was just punching bullseyes with the dang thing. So when you shoot it in a gun that's made for it, I think 45 is really good. And it also suffers from that shotgun thing. Your granddad said it kicked like a mule. Then your dad shot it for the first time when he was 8. And he said it kicked like a mule, and it just kicks like a mule because that's what you were told. Meanwhile, if you get introduced to it, like some people at my event, and it's like the first gun they shoot, they're like, oh man, this 45 is nice. And I'm like, yeah, the 110-pound woman likes shooting a 45. Meanwhile, the 200-pound guy's flinching like a chihuahua pooping a friggin' pine cone. It's like, I've watched it, and it's like, bro, stop. Just pull the trigger. The recoil will take care of itself. You're not going to mitigate the recoil on a 1911. Just lock your wrist, pull your trigger finger. You'll do well, trust me.
So we spent about an hour on the first questions coming in from the website. So I feel like we've accomplished something, because sometimes we do the whole show and don't even talk about the website questions. So that's kind of what the point of the show is. So we've done that. We've got us up to date. So anybody that's listening to this as a podcast, or I don't know, you're listening to this on YouTube or something, or even on X. Let me go look. We've got almost 50-50 listening on X and YouTube right now. But anyway, if you're in a discussion and somebody comes up with something, feel free to drop over to our AskGunQuestions.com and leave the question there so that we can then offer our spin on it, on the next Saturday or something. But anyways, we have a bunch of questions from the audience, from people that are listening live today. So thanks for that. C&T was the first one asking a good one. The real question is, will SCOTUS take up more gun cases before the court gets packed or swings to the left because judges retire? That's a great question. It's not something I've been paying attention to, so I don't have any insight on this, but I think I'd like to have somebody like Mark Smith or one of these people that do pay attention. That's the Four Boxes Diner guy. Somebody who does pay attention, address this, what's our weather report, I guess, look like? Do you have any idea?
I have no clue why they turned this one down, but there has to be a reason. There were a couple of people speculating, and I didn't watch it because, well, what is this speculation based on? I watched Yankee, and Yankee was like, "Hey, I told you the Supreme Court, they kind of suck when it comes to this," and I partially agree with him that the Supreme Court really doesn't lead the way in the fight for our rights. They just react to how pretty much the general public is, and they reflect that. They didn't lead the way, to individual rights during slavery, but after it was done, then all of a sudden, they're for equal rights, and it took them forever to rule on different things. Even Keller, they weren't on the cutting edge of that. Bruin, we already had carry permits in dang near half the states in the country when the Bruin decision came out 2 years ago. So the Supreme Court really doesn't lead when it comes to that. One of the guys that are suing the state now in New Jersey, his case was up on the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court bunted 10 cases down the road the year before Bruin. They just didn't hear 10 gun cases. The next 10 gun cases that were coming up on the Supreme Court, they didn't hear, and they listened to the Bruin decision. And that's great, because I think sometimes they want to make overall sweeping decisions. And that was one of them. So I can't guess what's coming at all. I hope, and this is the only reason I hope Biden doesn't win, and that we can get more constitutional judges on. I don't even care what way they lean, as long as they lean in direction of the Constitution and how it's written. That's what I want, because I want all of our rights for all Americans, and not to be playing games and have people try to advocate as a judge. So do I know what's happened? No. But what do I want happen? Just people follow the Constitution, leave our rights alone.
I'm going to try not to hit CT's follow-up, because I'm trying to remember what I was going to say here. I was going to say, I don't disagree with you at all. I think it's going to be partially determined, or it's going to depend on in what order things happen. So let's say that, we've had we had Heller, and that kind of was the modern, let's address the idea that the Second Amendment is for the individual, and where the individual can carry it, rather than this is some kind of the only instance of the Bill of Rights talking about a right of the state, which is essentially the position that says the well-regulated militia part, the clause, or whatever it's called, is the factor, and that, the Second Amendment is all about the militias. It would require the idea that the Bill of Rights is now, 9 of them are about the individual, but the second one is about the state. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So that issue aside, Heller kind of said, no, this is about the individual. And in additional, it says right to bear arms means they can carry this gun around. Then Chicago essentially was the instance that the anti-right side used to say, well, it doesn't mean in the states. And then the Miller decision went up with, I'm pretty sure the Second Amendment Foundation took, or excuse me, I'm saying Miller, it's McDonald, sorry, in Chicago.
Okay. Yeah.
Went up to the Supreme Court and said, no, this applies to the states. The states aren't exempt from this concept. Then Chicago is like, oh, no problem. We just won't do anything about it. And that's where Rhonda Izzo was like, no, Chicago has to do something. You can't just not do shit. So the Chicago essentially was like, oh, okay, no problem. You just can't have gun shops here or gun ranges. So no problem. You can exercise your rights, just not in Chicago. And then Rhonda Izzo was like, no, how about you? You can't do that. And again, this was Heller essentially refined to say, you know, yes, we have the individual right, and yes, it applies to the states, can't restrict that, and yes, the cities can't restrict that. And then Chicago is like, yeah, well, we're not going to do nothing. Rhonda Izzo had to go back to the Supreme Court. So we have two people that still exist, Heller and Rhonda Izzo, actually four people, because now we have Michael Cargill, who have taken things to the Supreme Court guns realm and won. But nobody talks about Rhonda Izzo, even though she's got Chicago Guns Matter, and does all kinds of good stuff for activism currently, in addition to taking two cases to the Supreme Court. But anyway, then Bruin comes, or the New York State Rifle Association versus the loser Bruin comes along and reinforces the idea that you can't apply some kind of well, we know better, or like, no, the ATF can also say this, like, no, this is right. No, the Bruin, excuse me, the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association was, you have to apply scrutiny at the time. You can't come up with this like, well, the greater good says that your rights don't matter. Well, no, our rights matter, and the greater good can go fuck off, because that's called bullying, and that's not a democratic republic anymore. That's just totalitarianism. I decide that the greater good says this, and therefore your rights are gone. So New York State Rifle and Pistol Association upheld that. Then we got Cargill versus, can't remember the guy, state, whoever, Texas is.
Yeah.
Something with it's an easy one to remember. I just don't remember it. But essentially that one was the ATF can't just make shit up and decide that's the interpretation or the way we're going to enforce. So we are having some great effects. And the reason I'm going through all these is to say these all happened fairly recently, and these judges are all still sitting there. So I think CNT's question originally, the first part of the question was more to the idea that what happens when it starts to flip or flips completely. And I guess my answer is getting around to, I think, the timing. So assuming all these things go through, right? And we've seen some bad laws get overturned, and we've seen some states kind of get upset and just create horrible anti-constitutional or unconstitutional laws just to challenge, which, oh, well, it sucks, but that's how the system works. The states are supposed to be experiments, and we're supposed to thrash those out as a group and then see which experiments work and which don't. And it's growing pains, and it sucks. It especially sucks for those behind enemy lines. But we're not helpless to just observe, which is frustrating, for me, because I think that we can do a lot more than just observe. But while we're experiencing this, right, like, we're going to see things change. Ideally, some assault weapons bans and stuff, some major stuff change. And as that stuff changes, we're going to see the results. And I guess what I'm getting at, let me use the analogy of the constitutional carry here in Arizona. That started in 2009. It went into effect 2010. So right now it's 2024. That was 14 years ago in this month. So it's 14 years ago. We're about to hit the anniversary of constitutional carry here in Arizona. So what was the big concern about constitutional carry? Blood in the streets. People are going to shoot each other over parking spaces. Kids that are drunk are going to be carrying around guns legally, and every dispute is going to be a gunfight in the streets. None of that happened ever. Any in the states. We have 29 states with constitutional carry now. So the reason we have 29 states with constitutional carry isn't because we won. It's because guns have been normalized, and the carrying of guns has been normalized so that there's no concern, very little concern in those states where it's been changed. And every time that happens, and every time that we do effective advocacy or awareness of the fact that 29 states have constitutional carry, anybody who's legally able to own a gun can carry the gun however they feel like. That's what constitutional carry is. There's no permission from the state. They just remove the requirement for permission to carry a firearm. And what happens is we have just more and more polite areas. We have more people who understand there's a fatal, or what I say, like a lethal result of crime. So the crime goes down. And the people who are carrying firearms aren't any more reckless. They're oftentimes less reckless because they know that there's massive consequences if they start a fight or something. So anyhow, I think that I guess what I'm saying is the timing here. So if we see good laws take effect, bad laws get removed, and then the time goes by that allows people to understand that the fear was unjustified, that the concern was unwarranted, then a new court couldn't suggest that gun laws have to happen. You know what I mean? Like, so if we live with any amount of time with the lack of anti-gun laws, and everyone can experience a time of peace and harmony and everybody's chill, and ideally gun owners stop buying guns because of fear and start buying guns because they're interesting, or the sports, the individual accomplishment of a shooting sports, or the team accomplishment of shooting sports. So I guess, Tony, what I was saying is it's all about timing. I don't know if you heard any of that, but, you know, in other words, since we've had these kind of good decisions, if we see the consequence of good laws, or what we would consider good gun laws, or the lack of gun laws ideally, and then time goes by, and I was using Arizona as an example. We've had constitutional carry for 14 years. Other states now, 29 states, like that's normalizing guns and carry of firearms. And it's creating that deterrent where bad guys know there's a lethal consequence for crime. So if time goes by with these court cases and bad gun laws are overturned, and the lack of gun laws exists, and then the lack of crime also exists, I think it'll be very difficult for even a anti-rights court to try suggesting that guns are a bad thing. Especially what's going to happen, and I'll just say as a side thing to this that is often overlooked, in a time when there's less need for guns because crime goes down, and there's more carry of guns because it's normalized and people do it because of less fear, but more of like, you know, the same reason you carry a knife. Like, I might need it, so I'm going to carry it. If I'm going to carry it, I might as well carry a cool one. You know, I might as well have 2 or 3 to choose from. And now carry just becomes another thing that we do, like our wallets or our knives or our wallet or whatever, you know, stuff that we carry, EDC. Then as guns are normalized and stuff, what was I getting at? That, well, I'll shut up. That's what I was getting at, though, is that I think that it's a timing thing. If we can spend some time on the clock with a lack of laws, I think it'd be very difficult for them to justify infringements again. Because right now they're using this. I was going to say, I think the side effect is that as we get chill without having to defend our rights all the time, then we can address ourselves the suicide issue. And because we've addressed already successfully child accidents, and we've addressed suicide pretty good, because honestly, we get bullied about our suicide rate, but our suicide rate in the United States is much lower than other countries, so much lower than Canada, so much lower than Japan. But because those countries don't kill themselves with guns, they don't count, right? It's the same as the uncivilized nations or whatever they say that have gun crime. Like, they don't count. We only count civilized nations to compare ourselves with. So they're only going to compare themselves with countries that have guns, and most of the countries that have guns have cultures where people aren't committing suicide. So, oh no, like, you know, it works out for them, but it's kind of handpicking bullshit statistics. But anyway, I was going to say the side effect of any amount of time on the clock with a lack of gun laws, we will, as a community, have more and more resources, time, and success challenging the suicide issue, which is obviously, we know, root causes are everything from military to stressful jobs to the way men are told to shut up and take it, right? That kind of shit.
Yep. So, yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. And that's also why they attacked firearms and gun culture, because they have to try to destroy it, because good times or bad, if you can just make guns verboten, you get rid of the, what do you call this? The emoji, the gun emoji. Mm-hmm. You make it had to be a toy, and then you just get rid of it completely. You attack people because they had a Pop-Tart in the shape of a gun. You throw a kid out of school because they used a finger gun. Like, you keep going to the extremes to make it like an evil thing. Meanwhile, even with the numbers they messed with, like what was it? 40% of people said they have a gun in a firearm or no gun in their home, or know someone with a gun in their home, and then you found out that they juggled and messed with the statistics, and that number is over 60% of Americans either own a gun or have a gun in their home. We have to push back. We have to, in my opinion, um, make guns great again. We have to put in work to invite people to the range. We have to, uh, and again, we have to use firearms for sporting events, sporting clays like we were talking about, shooting the shotgun, club events. You don't have to join you don't have to join like an official IDPA match and pay all those fees and get all the gear. You can just shoot at your local club once a week for $20. You don't have to join something. The Glock Sports Shooting Federation. All you have to do is just own a gun and show up. So if we start as a group, as gun owners, just participating in sports and turn firearms ownership into not only a tool that you can use defensively, but turn it into some sporting activity like golf and bowling. It's just something you can do with your family on a Friday night. We normalize it. And also, the more people that handle a firearm safely and learn the rules of firearm safety, the less accidents we have, the more respect people have for the thing, and the harder it is to paint it as some evil object that'll turn you into a murderer just because you own one.
Right, with no redeeming factor or no redeeming facet.
Yeah, whatsoever.
CNT followed up with, I think in this election, if this election goes left, the court flips or gets packed, Dems are already laying the groundwork to pack the court, for sure. But I go back to the system that has gone through at least one actual civil war, 2 world wars, all the other stuff, and the system is strong. It's just how the people use it. And I think then it's a platitude, maybe is the word, but it goes back to the hard times make strong men, and strong people, let's say, strong people make easy times, and then easy time. I don't know. You know how that thing goes, the 4 thing. I think that,
the thing.
You know what I'm talking about, though, right? Like that concept of the stress creates people that are hard, and then they create a situation, and then that situation creates people that don't have to fight, and then those people create a situation that requires people to fight again. All that happens in different ways. You can apply that to violence, but you can apply that to economics. You can apply that to just other things, in our culture. But I think that cycle goes on and on in the structure, or structure, or the support system of the way our country is made. And our country is essentially a structure of laws that take on the flavor or the spice of the people and the seats at the time. So just because it is just the 4th of July, and I've been watching a bunch of history movies or whatever where this isn't new. Like anything we think is happening that's stressful, I mean, some version of this happened in the Civil War, some version of this happened in the Revolutionary days, some version of this happened in those in-between times, right? Like this stuff where presidents don't like each other and people are divided. We've been divided a bunch of times, but we have a framework, we have a system that allows us to grow through that. And I think that's necessary, because you can't, again, it's like if you had a kid and you let that kid have only the best in life, never have a stress, never have a conflict, that kid's going to grow up and be effectively useless when they meet with some person who's had some adversity in their life, right? So you don't want to put a kid through only adversity, because then that's cruel or unnecessary, right? But so I think that by experiencing the good and the bad, we all come out better from it. And because we're experiencing this stuff, I would say more and more transparently, or like collectively. Like back in the day, the experience that we each had in the United States was definitely polarized and filtered through which version of news you watched. If you watch this channel or that channel or that channel, or maybe during the cable era, this cable thing or that cable thing, and now with the internet, this set of numbers or that set of letters or whatever, you're getting a different version of what's going on. But it's so much easier for someone who wants to get the full picture or to get a spectrum instead of just one version, that I think we're not doomed by any means. But anyway, that's I think my issue is that, yes, it might get bad or they might push the court one way, but that's just going to create a bunch of people who are determined to pull the court back apart or something, because of the system allows us to maneuver things, to change things back and forth like that.
Understand that we've been here before, and I think the fact that people stop reading history books after they finish their last test in school, regardless of what school that is or what is American history, it's like, hey, I listen and I read, and I don't answer everything, obviously, and I don't comment on everything that I read online. But the people that go in America has never been this divided before. I'm like, did you sleep through history class? Or did you have amnesia? I'm like, America has been divided from the very beginning. America's fought 2 civil wars, not 1, 2. The American Revolution was a civil war. We just won. If we would have lost, that would have been an unsuccessful civil war. At that time, those people got uppity and tried to stand up, and we crushed them, like the Boer War in South Africa.
We'd be drinking tea, but otherwise it would be exactly that.
Yeah. So yes, we fought 2 civil wars. We've been divided to the point that we split into militia and killed each other. We're not there yet because you're in an argument with your aunt in Poughkeepsie on frickin' Facebook. Yeah, we're not even close. We have a system in place that allows the courts to swing. Just like seats in the House and seats in the Senate change. But we have to participate. People continually forget that part. If you're not participating, and I'm talking about more than just voting in a presidential election, then you are also kind of sort of allowing this to happen without you, and just acting as if you're some passenger on this train with no ability to make a difference. And you just named out a bunch of people that actually have made a difference, but taking cases to the Supreme Court. I'm not saying that everybody has to do it, but I'm just showing that individuals can make a difference by standing up and fighting. And that, if we want this to go, and I see a lot of guys in the comments section that actually do contribute and fight and create content about freedom, but that has to go to everyone. You can't just be a passenger on this thing as a citizen in America, because we built this for the citizen to actually have a voice and exercise it. And many, many people aren't, or the only time they try to exercise is during the presidential elections, which, if you're comparing the presidential election to the local and state election, it's the one with the least amount of power over you, over your everyday existence. Other than picking members of the Supreme Court and going to war, it's more important to elect your local representatives and your state representatives. And
it's almost like an engineered distraction, right? To put such an emphasis on the presidential one. I mean, it is an important one, but like you say, I agree with you.
It's like they're telling you, you need to vote in this one and forget these. I'm like, no. You need to pay attention even to your school board election. You really do, if you want to affect what's going on locally and what your kids are dealing with. If you want to see who picks up your garbage, if you want to have a fire department, whether it's paid for or volunteer, all of that is local stuff, and we need to participate if we want to make a difference. And I say it a lot, and I try to stress it a lot, and that's why I tell people, stop getting caught up in this cult of personalities and look at policies and what people are doing, and look at the track records and change them out if you don't like it. It requires work. America is an awesome experience. Go ahead.
Let me just interrupt because I don't want to forget. I'm going to edit what you said there and say, oh, dang it. How'd you say it? You just said it requires work, or I was going to say, I think a way to say that is it works. Oh, shit. How did you say it? I've interrupted so that I could get it right before I lost what you were going to say, or what you actually said. But I think you said, like, when it works, but I think I was gonna try to say something to the effect of, when we work at it is when we get the change. So you said something like, if we want to change, work at it. I was going to say something like, just to add a timeline to that. Like, we're not just saying that, like, it's happened so many other times in so many different ways. It's the thing changes when people work. So it's just a matter of being part of the work and not thinking of it as like, oh, something I got to do. It's just like something I got to do again, or something that I've got to lean into. And then I was going to follow up, and I totally messed that up. I interrupted you. Sorry about that. But I thought in my head, I thought, oh, I'm just going to quickly interrupt you and then and make this point. But then the second part of it is that we don't have to do, like Rebecca Schmoy. I'm going to use her as a perfect example. She's someone who we all know from advocacy in Kansas, who ran for office and then got elected. So now she's literally done the work that a lot of people would suggest is like the ultimate thing you can do is run for office and then be there to be that advocate. But even if you, for whatever circumstances, don't want to or can't run, we can certainly support the Rebecca Schmoys out there. I'm going to use Eli Crane, I think, from here in Arizona. I think he's a SEAL, but a military guy who ran. He's the guy that created that 50 BMG bottle opener company and moved to Arizona to run it. And then I think it's the county south of here. He's either my county or the county south of here. He's or the district or whatever. He's our congressperson. So we can support those folks, and we can do it as much as just mentioning them often, so that people get, they become aware of them. Or the next level up from that is linking and sharing stuff on the socials, which ultimately helps out the mechanisms that monitor stuff online. Anyway, I interrupted you there. I don't know if you had more to go there, if you were kind of wrapping up.
No, I mean I was wrapping up and saying America's awesome if we use the power that we have as citizens. It's just been a concerted effort for a really long time to try to convince you that you don't have that power and that power is useless. Anybody who tells you your vote doesn't count has bought into that lie, or is trying to sell you a lie. Well
said. Or they just haven't experienced the positive, how do you say it? Hasn't experienced the power, I guess, of getting a voice out there, getting a message out there, having it get widespread, and then affect, decisions that people are about to make. And the thing is, it's without time on the clock, without paying attention to this stuff. When we talk about like Heller, there wasn't like a Heller case or something. Like Heller, they had to handpick Heller, and a bunch of people sat down and said, we should do something like a Heller. Now let's go find something that we can do. It wasn't like Heller just happened. It was inevitable, and everyone just jumped on board like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Like this was a strategic thing. I don't know if all the other ones were the same. I don't think they were. I think the other ones were, okay, we have this thing that already kind of got started. Now we have to mold it. We have to adjust it. We have to clarify it, I guess a better way to say it. You know what I mean? Like it's a different strategy. And if people haven't experienced that or paid attention to that, I guess, because a lot of us have been around to live through it, the media isn't going to say, hey, look, Heller happened, and here's what Heller means. And now McDonald has to happen because this is what, the media is never going to talk about this. I'm sure they didn't even talk about McDonald. Our community hardly ever talks about McDonald. So anyway, I'm going to move on. We could do this in 2 hours, I think, and still address most of the questions that came in, but we have a bunch of good questions and they're all over the place. So this next one comes from 500 Magnum. Welcome again. You haven't been around for a while. Says, glad you guys talked me out of that Springfield. So it's a kind of an open one. I don't really remember which Springfield you were thinking about. But I figured it's a good opportunity to bring it up. We're not sponsored by nobody. You don't see any ads here. I guess I probably should put an ad up for my own store once in a while. But aside from Tony doing his diversity shoot, which is not a for-profit thing at all, and aside from us just doing this because we like to hang out and then we go live for a while to chat with folks, we're just doing this. So I can talk shit about Springfield all I want. No, I'm not offended. No, Springfield's never going to withhold funding of my stuff because they've never offered to fund my stuff, and they probably never would, because I often talk shit about them, essentially because of what they did in Illinois. And I like to, remember. And I think that especially in our immediate, this was just a few years ago, our immediate era here of let's try to normalize guns, having a company just do a really asshole move, financially asshole move, I guess, thinking that no one would give a shit, at a time when it's kind of super critical for Illinois to be championed, right? Like I've always said, we should have sister states, we should have sister cities, we should have organizations that work together in all these states that are just enjoying freedom. And we do. We sit around enjoying freedom and taking a bunch of shit for granted. And we have relatively few, 9 or so states that are sitting around, we call it behind enemy lines, and we look down and feel sad for you once in a while. But aside from that, what the fuck? We could have like 9 sister states. Am I wrong? If we have 9 states that are being assholes and we have 50 states, we have something like 5 states to 1. We could have 5 sister states to every state that's being abused right now. And that means we could have the power of 5 other states helping that state out and paying attention. But anyway, nobody's organizing that. But on the other side, we have individual companies that just do asshole shit. And I don't want to dig it all up again, but that's probably why I talked you out of Springfield. That being said, I don't like the grip safety. I think that part's stupid. I'm assuming we're talking about the XS, whatever they're called, the X, what are they even called?
XD and XDM, yeah.
Thanks. The grip safety makes no sense to me. I've always hated that stupid feature. I know why they were invented. Fine. I don't agree with it, but I always thought it was a stupid feature on a firearm. So why they would put it on a civilian firearm? So anyway, that's my 2 major gripes about it. Otherwise, I actually think it's a fairly nice gun. It's kind of cool. I don't love the ergonomics of it, but I can see why somebody who has a different size hand or something might love the ergonomics of it. Being fully ambidextrous all the time, I'm okay with. I don't like it when people make guns ambidextrous or when people flip left-handed guns to be, or right-handed guns to be quote unquote left-handed, because I've known people left-handed my whole life, and everybody I know who's left-handed doesn't want their things to be different than anybody else's. They want to be able to pick up whatever and work it, so they just work it differently than they would, a different tool. So I don't like stuff that flips a gun, but when a gun is always ambidextrous, I kind of like it. I could be talked out of it because I think there's more opportunity for failures, but that could just be one of those theoretical things that I'm talking about earlier in the show, right? So anyway, that's my thing on the Springfield. Do you have anything to add to you guys talked about, talked about Springfield?
Yeah, cool. I just look at Springfield as not on par as a top tier standard production self-defense firearm. Reason I don't is because of what we think of when we walk into the store, and it has nothing to do with advertising. It has to do with, well, who actually gets issued this? Which departments have you seen? Which militaries have you seen using it? And when we come up and we talk about Smith & Wessons, when we talk about Colt, when we talk about SIG, we're talking about companies that actually, and HK, we're talking about countries that have military and police contracts. Very few of them have a what is that thing? A Springfield XD. Like Croatia.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the entire list. Croatia. So I look at it as that's not top tier. I put Springfield Armory XDs in the same list as I do maybe Taurus and Ruger when it comes to semi-automatic striker fire pistols. That's not what I'm walking into and making a beeline to.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, I love Glocks.
I don't know if anybody's ever put it in that kind of layers, but I would have to put Taurus above Ruger and XDs. I'm putting XDs and Ruger in the like 1 department or less, like you're saying. But Taurus actually has, because Taurus actually gets used in South America, don't they? Like by people, like by units and stuff.
Taurus and Bursa. Both
so
are on the top of.
We talk shit because we've lived long enough to know shitty Tauruses, but Tauruses ain't shitty anymore, as far as I know. Everybody says they're great. Sure. I don't like some of their designs, but some people don't like Kel-Tec or whatever. But Taurus used to be junkier metals, and they would have issues. It was a long time ago. It was like the 90s. So, but anyway, I'd say Taurus is a level higher.
Hello?
I just tried to stop interrupting you. No, you're good. I just shut up so I wasn't stopped interrupting you.
Oh, no, I agree with what you're saying, especially about Taurus. But it goes to show you how long your bad reputation can last if you put some stuff out, how long it takes you to recover from it, because people still poop on Kimber for what they did in the 90s and early 2000s, and they've changed up too. But what I'm saying, though, is when it comes to Springfield and their handguns, their polymer striker-fired handguns, they don't get a lot of love from me because I think there are better options, and I'm glad he went with the Glock.
Same here. Also, okay, I'll shut up. But so that's a good one. Then we got Patriot from Detroit, from Michigan. Is that considered sporting clays? I like it when they roll the clays like they're rabbits. 5-stand will also do it. 5-stand is more like you stand in one spot, like if you were doing trap. So trap, you stand in. I'm gonna go from the basics. Trap, you stand in one spot, and maybe you do move a little bit, but essentially you're standing in one spot, maybe 3 spots, and then they shoot clays from in front of you going away, and that would be like your quail or something that's on the ground that flies away from you. So that's like a quail or a partridge or that kind of thing. What is the other thing? A pheasant. So these are critters that you'll walk along and they'll be in the grass in front of you and they scare up and they fly away from you. So that's trap. Then you get skeet, which is a level funner because you've got this playing field or something like a big board on the ground, and you're going to stand in different positions as you shoot 50 rounds, two shots from like 10 positions or something. And then there's a high tower and a low tower, and they're from the left and the right. So you're going to get 1 or 2 clays coming from the low or from the high, coming from left or coming from the right. And as you're moving around the field, that also means they're in front of you or to the side of you or right above you. And it's much more dynamic. And that's more like your doves or sometimes whatever birds are in a tree and flying away from you. Like a turkey will do that sometimes. So like the birds that are in a tree and flying kind of randomly, sporadically away from you. And I think a little bit of ducks too. Somewhere ducks fit into all this. I never shoot ducks, so I don't know what butter shooting clays is ducks. But then you get to 5-stand, and 5-stand is there's just 3 places you stand, if I remember, or maybe there's 5 places that you stand, which are essentially next to each other. So you're not really as a dynamic range as you are in skeet. But now there's a high tower, a low tower, a trap tower, and the sideways rabbit thing, and maybe more, depending on how elaborate the range you're at gets into it. But that's super fun because if there's a pattern, I haven't shot it enough to know if there's a pattern. I think I maybe shot it for like a 6-month stint. Like we would go out there and shoot skeet quite a bit, and then I would shoot 5-stand whenever it was open. So it was just so fun because it comes from, you never know what, I never knew what was coming. Like I say, if there was a way to game it, I never paid attention because I liked the randomness of it. But you essentially shoot 2, I think, shots at each stand. And sometimes there was other people there, and sometimes I was just shooting by myself. And it was just fun because there's targets coming out of wherever. And we were shooting at night because in the desert here in Tucson, we go shoot skeet at night. So you're standing there against the black sky with a bunch of floodlights and stuff, and those skeets are orange. So it's almost like a video game, except you're actually shooting a shotgun and you're actually sitting in and watching a TV. But then you get to sporting clays, which is 5-stand, but like what Tony's saying, where you walk around like almost like a golf course of trees in it, or a forest preserve or something. You're just walking along, and then it'll say, stop here and pull this button. And then you do, and a skeet goes flying, except sometimes it's rolling on the ground. Sometimes it's flying towards you. Sometimes it's going away from you. Sometimes it's doing whatever. Maybe there's 2. So that's the ultimate funning is sporting clays. Now, if there's more than that, there probably is. I don't know, but there's probably something with steel nowadays. Maybe something more defensive home type of thing. But anyway, hopefully that wasn't too long a explanation. So the rolling on the ground like rabbits is both 5-stand and sporting clays. I don't know if you want to throw anything on that.
Oh, no, actually, I don't know much about it. I shot them at Fort Dix because they had some stands set up there, range 14, where I used to go. And I went so much I became friends with the guys there. So when they had their day off and did their range shoot, I actually got to hang out with them and shoot with them. And I'd never shot it before. Was it 5-stand you call it? Or whatever the thing is, you walk from station to station around in a half moon.
Yeah, but if they're only coming from the left and right, then that's skeet.
Okay, this was coming from left and right. And I think they even had one out front.
Okay, then that's probably some 5-stand or something. Yeah. Yeah, those are way fun.
Yeah. So it was all fun to me because you're pulling triggers on things, and you pull a trigger here and something blows up over there. And that's just one of the coolest guy things ever. So that's the way I look at it. Oh, John Petrolino in a hizzy.
Welcome. Author of Decoding Firearms, correct?
Yes, author of Decoding Firearms, and the dude who's done the most writing about the 2A4E diversity shoot. The most writing about it.
Welcome.
Get your pen ready, bro. I'm going to do some stuff.
500 is saying, I've been wondering for a while, when do you think they'll see triple stack magazines, and how will they make them run reliably? Well, I've got a Surefire quad stack, which is, I'm pretty sure, modeled after the communist quad stacks that they made for the AKs. And they essentially have three followers. There's one follower that kind of diverts, and then it diverts into a second follower, or, the second and third follower, I guess you could say, or like the secondary followers that then create the second, those things. My Surefires run pretty decent, and I've given them to guys who ran full auto a bunch of times up at Big Sandy, like some people I knew that had M16s and things that ran AR mags. I gave them my 100 because I wanted to. Back then, I was doing reviews on YouTube all the time, so I wanted to make sure that 100-round Surefire was legit. And I don't even know how many times, but nobody had any complaints except for having to load the thing because it loads like a stupid box mag. You can get loaders, so it does make it. It's actually 3 or 4 decent loaders for AR mags, but still, like, you have to load the thing. But aside from that, it runs great. So a triple stack, I just don't know technically if anybody's put any effort into a triple stack because the quad stacks exist. And I don't know if the commies did a quad stack because the triple stack didn't work, or they just didn't, I have no idea what the history is of that. But anyway, without that, otherwise, do you think a triple stack is a thing?
They haven't
touching it.
I look at it this way. Cool that you said all that, but they haven't figured out double stack yet. And sometimes they even mess up single stack. So I'm not holding out hope that this other thing is going to become something, mainly because unless the military asks for it, there's not going to be the funding there. Right now, like you said, we have 9 states behind enemy lines, and they're messing with ammo capacity. So unless the government can fund it or civilian ownership can fund it, there's no reason to put that much development into it. No one's screaming for a higher capacity, really, over what we have now. Drums don't really work that great. You got the Surefire, but I think the 60 round Surefire was like $100, and what was the other one? 90 rounds?
No, you're right. The 60 was the normal one. I had the 100, or maybe it's 120, but the 60 it was super. No, it's total, and it's useless. Like it is literally just a theoretical thing. Unless you're running a saw or whatever it is that uses those, it's a machine gun. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're useless. I liked it for the idea of, like, if I was like a door gunner and I needed to grab a gun that was strapped to the helicopter all the time, because I'm not carrying it, it's strapped to the helicopter, but when I need it, I want every available round I could ever have in it. So instead of having mag couplers, let's just make 100-round thing stick out of it. But again, that's an AR mag where you're never touching it, except for to remove it. You're never touching it, right? So who cares? I could have a drum in there, nobody cares. But with a pistol, like talking a triple stack, you couldn't do a triple stack 22, let alone a triple stack 380 or anything bigger, right? Like nobody's hand would go around that. So I don't think a triple stack would exist for that reason.
Yeah, I 100% believe that. Plus, when people came out with the double stack 45, or heck, even the Beretta M9. Oh, it's so wide, it's so thick, I can't get my hand around it. And so adding another column to that, not going to happen commercially. Even if you have, you're going to have to figure out a new way to put a mag on if you want more capacity, like the P90 that has that tray on the top, or the Russian Bison that has the thing under the barrel, the hexagonal magazine under the barrel that holds 50-something rounds. Because if you're talking handgun, it just gets too big for someone to actually use effectively the way we shoot handguns now. And then there's diminishing returns. How much did you pay for that damn thing? When you can get a Magpul mag for $12 and just get good at mag changes, or get a coupler, or get some duct tape and some cardboard and make your own coupler.
And that's the thing too, is couplers exist, and love them or hate them, nobody uses them. Like, unless they're that situation I was just saying, like it's somehow your vehicle gun and you need it for like escape and evade. So you want it to be just loaded for bear. Nobody else is using them. Even the people that are doing, I don't know, whatever you'd consider anything. Like any kind of operators aren't using couplers. They just have a lot of mags on them, but they don't make their gun heavier. And then even like bounty hunters or somebody like that, I'm not aware of anybody like that tactically or strategically carrying on gun when you don't need to. You know, it's just, why make your gun heavier and harder to deal with when you can put it on you, where it's super easy to put it on you, and now it's not an issue, right? It's just part of your body weight. All right, different topic completely. If we're not cutting everybody off, but we're getting towards the 2-hour mark. Patriot asked an awesome question, which again I haven't heard anybody asking ever. I don't know, at least not in that outside of a video comments on, like the comments on a video. But he asks, I'm looking for a black powder signal cannon. Any thoughts? I'll let Tony go first because I've got a collection of them. I can go on and on about these things. I've literally had hour discussions about these, but I don't know if you've got anything from your side.
Don't even know anything about it. So yeah, you roll with that, man.
Oh, okay. We were just talking about, like, I think they use them for sure on boats for like a reason. I think they do have a reason on boats. I just don't know because I don't live near water. But they're made for boats, and you can get practical ones made out of stainless steel and everything. But essentially, a black powder cannon isn't anything. It's not a gun. It's just a thing that makes noise. Potentially, if you put a projectile in it, in some states, it might be an issue, I suspect. But because it's black powder and it's not modern ignition, most everybody considers that just nothing. And since it's not a gun, because there's no grip on it, you're not carrying it around. I don't really think it. I don't know. I don't want to speak for states that are super horrible, but for the most part, it's not a gun. If it was close to being a gun, it would be a black powder gun. And since those aren't regulated anywhere nationally, or, well, I shouldn't say anywhere. I don't think they're regulated pretty much anywhere, really. They essentially fall out of the realm of having to worry about them, so they can ship them and you can just buy them. That being said, they're just kind of a novelty / fun little thing to have, maybe for 4th of July or something, just to make noise. So, but I've seen them and I own maybe, I don't even know now. I'm going to say 10 because I might own 10 still. I sometimes give them to people, and I got a couple of times I bought more than one of the same one just because you don't see them that often. And if I had money, I'm dumb like that, I would buy more than one because I'll also give them to people as gifts, and I just like the idea of them. So if I'm out shooting with somebody and I have a lunchbox full of them, if I bring out my lunchbox and somebody's there and wants it, I'll usually give them one if I have doubles. So I have a growing and fluctuating collection of them. But I appreciate, when I was a little kid, we had one that was, I don't remember what it was. My dad liked the Civil War, so it was probably some old Civil War replica thing. But, on like the 4th of July or something, we'd bring that out and shoot it once or twice. And it was black powder, but it used a cap or something a lot to shoot it, a little tiny cap. So it was more like a scale model than it was anything else. Then I've just started acquiring them over the years, and I've had a couple of companies send me them. And then I've, like I say, seen them at gun shows and bought a bunch. So I've got them from, they look real, to just I have one, in fact, that's just a piece of wood with like a cast iron cannon. It looks like something from like the Civil War or something, but I think somebody just made it in like a shop class, and they decided to make a signal cannon instead of a bird feeder or whatever in like their shop class. So I've got some that are super crude, and I've got some that are super neat. Some of them are just like somebody sat down in a metal shop and screwed a bunch of washers and things together, and it turned out to be like a cannon, and it actually works. So anyway, I've got a bunch of them, and I really think they're neat. As far as trying to find one or whatever, here's my thoughts on it. You don't see them enough. It's like Chinese stars, if I'm allowed to say that. It's like throwing stars, whatever I'm supposed to say. But you don't see them that often. So if you like them, buy them, and then decide if you like it afterwards. But they're not a big price. It costs. Usually they're like $20 or something, unless you're buying somebody's work of art. Because a lot of times, like I say, they're just kind of hobbled together from crude or inexpensive parts to just accomplish the task. And in that case, just buy a bunch of them and see which one you like best, or have more than one. Because now if you have one, you can go bang. And then after a while, you can go bang. But if you have three, you can set them all up and go bang, bang, bang. So having more than one is not a problem. I have, like I say, handfuls of them at least at a time. And I just keep them in a lunchbox. I have a little tin of triple T powder or whatever it is, the really fine black powder that you would put in the, what do you call that thing? The cap? The what do you call the part where the flint hits? The cup? No.
The frizzen?
Is that what it is?
The
I don't know what the
frizzen?
name is. Whatever that part is, and it could be. I just don't remember the
Mhm.
name of it. Whatever you, no, the flash in the pan. Is it the pan? It's the pan. I
Okay,
think.
yeah.
The frizzen is probably the thing that the flint hits on. I think is the
Okay.
scratchy part that it hits on. But I don't know. Anyway, that's that powder that you would put there. It's not the powder you'd put in the black powder gun. It's the powder you'd put there,
Okay.
and it's just finer. So anyway, what I have is a 9mm cartridge case, essentially a shot one, that somebody took a piece of wire and wrapped it around the rim, where the extracting like the rim of the case, and just twisted the wire, and it turned it into a little scoop, and then that's the amount that you put into a cannon. So essentially, like a 9mm case, that tiny little case is about how much powder you need to make some noise out of a black powder cannon, and they're super fun. I can't recommend them enough. If I remember, I'll go dig up some of my videos, but I've done everything from like just bringing them out and shooting one while we're out at the range to doing entire videos. Like whenever somebody sent me one time, sent me like 3 of them, and I remember going up onto the mountain and filming a whole bunch of dedicated videos, because they gave me some to show off how fun they are. But you can shoot like balloons, you can shoot at stuff, shoot cans off of stuff, and you can put stuff in them. I mean, unless it's against the law where you're at, you can put like I like to shoot a 30 round or 30 caliber projectile because it kind of looks like a World War II projectile, like what the boats or the Navy ships would shoot, and it's kind of scale, and it's big enough that it doesn't go anywhere because the cannon doesn't have enough powder to shoot it anywhere. And it also has I don't nail them down or anything. So there's the Newton's law. As soon as it shoots, the cannon starts rolling backwards. So it really doesn't shoot very far or nothing unless you want it to. But that makes it real easy to retrieve the projectile. So I've got a couple of 30 caliber projectiles that I just had laying around that I started shooting that are all gross now because I've shot them so many times, but they still work and I can find them all the time. Otherwise, I'll shoot ball bearings or just go to the store and buy lead for a cap and ball gun and shoot those. But yeah, super fun. Actually, I've never done it, but some of them might be the right caliber to shoot like a spent case. Also, I like to shoot spent cases out of my black powder revolver, not revolver, but black powder Derringer looking thing, single shot black powder gun. I shoot 7.62 by 39 cases out of it, and they shoot awesome. They're free and they shoot great. So I bet you could shoot like either 38 or 380 cases or something like that out of some of those cannons. If I ever take my cannons out again, I might. I don't know if I ever go shooting again. I'll try to remember to shoot some cases out of them. But anyway, hopefully that wasn't too wasted of time. But I'm a big fan of those little cannons. Let's see. Ozzy is saying black powder guns have to go through an FFL in Illinois. Oh my goodness, it is so stupid. CNT says if it's black powder and loaded at the muzzle, it's completely legal, typically. And it has to do with the ignition a lot of times, because they can make black powder guns that essentially you open up the back and shove a projectile thing in there, like a little cartridge looking thing, and then you just shoot it off with a cap. And I mean, it's kind of like a bullet, but it's not, what do they call it, modern ignition, because it uses a cap still. So it's not a gun. But I could see somebody.
So in Jersey, they treat them like a real firearm. And if we're talking, I don't know about the signal cannons. Like I said, I don't know anything about them. But you can buy them out of state and bring them back into the state, and they're fine. You don't have to jump through those hoops because federally it is not a freaking firearm. So it's just some weird New Jersey thing because they arrested a guy. You gotta love this. It's a document collector, whatever name is for people that collect documents. That's not nerd because I'm not being rude. He purchased some documents from the early 1700s. And the person that was selling it sold the documents, also sold him, included, just tossed it in, a flintlock pistol from that era. He wanted to get rid of it, and here was a chance to offload it He said it works great because what he did was take photos of the documents for stuff, and he also had the flintlock pistol that he used for a prop. Well, the person that bought it was a retired school teacher, and he's like, I don't even own a gun, didn't even think about it. He said, the guy gave it to me wrapped in a cloth. He said, so when I got the documents, I cared about those, and I didn't want to ride around with the stupid flintlock on my seat, so I threw it in my glove compartment. Well, he forgot about it because he didn't want to buy it. It wasn't something he even thought of, and when it was out of sight, it was out of mind. Well, he got pulled over, and he went to reach for his paperwork in his glove compartment, and the cop saw it, and that's what was it. And he told him what it was, and he showed the cop. The cop was like, "No big deal," gave it back to him. Then all of a sudden, a day later or 2 days later, they showed up and arrested him for possession of a firearm. The DA wanted him charged. So, lawyer extraordinary, gun lawyer extraordinary, Evan Knappen took the case and pretty much professionally embarrassed the prosecutor because the prosecutor was trying to get it tested to see if it was used in a crime. Because that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to brush up to make sure it wasn't used in a crime. And Evan Knappen said, it's a pistol from the early 1700s. Even if it was used in a crime, everybody involved is long dead. What are you trying to prove? And pretty much it just went away and got dismissed because they were trying to convict this guy on a felony, and we're trying to get him to plead on a felony. Well, he's a retired school teacher. He pleads on a felony, that cuts off his pension. So now everything you worked for your entire life is gone, and you might get you might have to live off Social Security. So it was a real thing to him, and it wasn't just something that you take a plea deal on. Also, one of the reasons it's important to hire a lawyer that knows about firearms and cares about you, not dependent on getting appointed one who just wants to get out of there. So, of course, the whole thing was thrown out because it was freaking ridiculous.
Gordon Van Gilder. There you go. Right on. Patriot said that he got a phone call and missed everything we talked about there. So I was mostly rambling about the cannons, but I went off on a riff there for a little bit. I actually looked, and I don't have a Canon video. So maybe whenever I start making videos again, I'll do a Canon video. I definitely like shooting them, and I honestly can't remember what I even own anymore. I know that I bought a couple at Wanamaker one time, and I've never shot them. They were like the ones that are kind of like somebody in a machine shop kind of just assembled them, and they look like a Canon, but I'm like, oh, those are like cheap. They were like $20 or less than $20, and I know they'll work. They're strong, but they don't really look like a Canon. They look like somebody screwed together a bunch of bolts or whatever. I'm pretty sure I have a couple like that I didn't shoot, and I might even have some others, because for a while there I was driving around the country going to gun shows, and that's definitely the kind of thing I would scoop up if I had, spare $20, and I just throw them in that lunchbox. And I have no idea how many are in there right now. Problem is, I really can't get to that lunchbox. I've got so many other projects in the way that literally I can't even get to that lunchbox if I wanted to go grab it. But to keep moving, I don't know how much time you got. Can you keep going? Or we're at 2 hours already.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so we have just a couple more questions left. 500 asked, any of y'all shot those Calico pistols? Very cool looking and very good capacity. I certainly have. I've got a lot of experience with them, but I'll let Tony go first. I don't know where you're at with them, if we've ever even talked about them.
No, never. I remember being the dude when those things came out. They were in the magazines, I think like American Survival Magazine, Survivalist Magazine they were in, and other things, and I thought they were really cool because we're talking about the ones with the mags, right? The 50-round magazines and 100-round 22 mag.
Yeah, like you were saying with the Russian one, they're helical or whatever. They're like they look like DNA, kind of.
Yep. Always thought they were cool. Never saw one in real life. Just really dug them. But I heard it didn't work that well, because that's a complicated magazine system to work, and especially if you get it in 22 long rifle. Now, not only do you hope the magazine works, you hope the rims don't overlap, and just 22 doesn't start doing what 22 does and not work sometime. But nope, never shot it, never even seen it in real life. And if I did, I'd 100% geek out over it.
And then of course Spaceballs. So I don't like that movie, but everybody does. Everybody likes that movie. So that's where it also is like not just famous from, but even if you don't like guns and you take somebody out, like, oh, I'm taking my cousin out to the range. He's never been a gun person. He sees a Calico, he's gonna go, oh, that's the gun from Spaceballs. Let me shoot it. So everything Tony just said, like literally everything
Oh
you just
God!
said. Oh, go ahead.
Now you just made me want to shoot one even more, so I could just shoot it and say lines from Spaceballs.
Me?
Comb the desert. We ain't seen shit. No, don't remember the line with the black dude with the Afro pick combing the desert.
Oh, I remember. I've seen the movie. I hate Mel Brooks. I don't like those movies, but I know that everybody
Okay.
loves those movies, so I don't really care one way or the other. I just don't ever like watch them over again or whatever. But anyway, so that's definitely an iconic one from that movie, though. Like it always comes up when we talk about that. So my deal was I was exactly like Tony. I've known about them since they came out, and to me they just look fragile. And I've been around enough guns that to me they didn't look like. I mean, I figure they're kind of gimmicky, which I don't have a problem with, but because they weren't, what's the word? Like because they weren't common and everybody I knew didn't own one, I figured they weren't that great, right? So it's just one of those things. Like I don't have to shoot it to know that I've never seen one, so they're probably not that great. Because if you never see something like an HK, I never saw either. But I'm assuming an HK is amazing and it's expensive. Why I never see one. But when something is expensive and I never seen one, period, I don't even see gun shops have it. I just always assumed, it's outside the norm. It's outside the realm of like a gun everybody's going to own type of thing. So anyway, I've just never been all that curious about them. But then when I was hanging out at the gun shop all the time, Bob got he's had them over the years. So I definitely had some experience just fiddling with them, but they were always kind of, let's say, as is. Bob ended up getting two from a guy. No, he got two 22s and a 9mm from a guy. So two clone 22 carbines and a 9mm pistol from a guy. And the guy had rebuild kits for the magazines and he didn't install them, but he had them. And when Bob got them at the shop, he was like, hey, you want to put these in? I'm like, heck yeah, I want to put them in. And then I'm going to film all that. Right. So I went out and shot them with changing out the mags. Then I filmed changing out the mags, which is before, back when YouTube didn't care about that shit, I guess. So I'm probably going to get struck now because those videos probably exist somewhere. Anyway, then I went out and shot them after. And that's the big deal. Like you just said, like they have a helical mag. So imagine how long that spring is. It like curls up inside of there. So it's just a super long spring, and long springs are just, it's just difficult for a spring to be a spring when it's that long. Plus it has to go around a helical. So it's kind of scraping and moving. And anyway, so it definitely wears out. But when you put the rebuild kit in it, which are available, the company still exists as far as I know. They're just not super widespread still. There's just not that many people looking for them. But once you put a rebuild kit in, boom, it's like night and day. So I imagine there's probably something with the feed lips, like, maybe that'll wear out at some point. And I don't know if that's a replaceable part or not. But as far as the springs and I think it was the follower also, once you put the new springs in, it was night and day because it was a little glitchy on the 22. The 9 was not that much of a big difference, but it was a stronger, more deliberate magazine with the new springs. But the 22 was glitchy, and then it went to flawless, essentially. So they're neat when they run. They're not full auto or nothing. These are just regular guns, but you can pull the triggers fast. You want to pull a trigger, and I got a video out there somewhere where I set the tripod up, and I essentially put the tripod, walked up to the tripod so it was in my chest. The camera, phone was on my chest, and then brought one gun to each side of the camera, and then just shot the 200 round mag, so 200 rounds into the desert, just to do it, and quote unquote to test the magazines after the new rebuild kits. But that was pretty fun. So that's my experience with them. They're neat, but they're just a little too fragile-y. They're kind of a 1022, like a Ruger 1022 upside down with this giant helical magazine. So they're not quite, they are kind of a bullpup. The rear sight is on the magazine. The front sight is where the magazine connects. So, it has to have a magazine in it. In other words, to even shoulder and shoot the thing. It's part of the gun. So it's just, it's almost like shooting what it's like shooting? It's like shooting a super soaker because you've got this big, thing that you're not used to, a big air tank kind of looking thing. Maybe it's like shooting air, what do they call them? Paintball gun. Because paintball guns also have like a big tank It's almost like shooting something like that. And it gets a little bit lighter, I guess, technically. I didn't really think about it, but 100 rounds of 22 weighs something. That's a lot of lead. 22 is like 50% lead. 9mm. I can't remember. Was it a 50 round 9mm? No, I don't think it was 100. So it's probably
I think it was 50 round 9mm. Yeah.
So that definitely feels lighter. A little, but again, the weight is up behind your gun, so it's an interesting thing. And like I was saying before, like different kind of recoil impulse on different guns. That one's totally unique, like totally unique, because it's just a little tiny short action happening underneath this giant mass with a gun that you can you're shouldering it, but it's like shouldering a BB gun or something. It's just a tiny little thing, so it's not like shouldering a comfortable strong gun or anything. Anyway, if you can rent one somewhere, shoot it. Like that would be definitely the kind of gun to rent and get an experience of shooting it. As far as buying one, depends on how much money you got. I know people that buy $1,000 guns because they got nothing else better to do. If you're going to save up for one, I'd shoot it first. I would not save up for one, buy it, and then figure out if you like it. Same with like a SPAS 12. That would actually be an interesting show. Guns that you would not want to buy without shooting first. Don't just think it's cool and buy it because you may not like it.
Yeah, I totally agree when it comes to a lot of guns that you're geeked up about. Rent it if you can rent it, or find somebody that has one, or go to a machine gun shoot if you want to check something out. Like, because I've learned a few things. One, never understood the MP5 and how everybody got geeked out about it outside from it being a movie gun. Well, I finally shot one at Heritage Guild doing one of the diversity shoots, and it was freaking awesome. The way it handled and everything, the recoil or lack thereof. But, there are some things that if you could buy one, would you buy it? And I'm like, no. Because I think there are better versions of that roller delayed blowback system. Because it really is the fact that they just shoot so easily with less recoil. You know what I mean? And we're talking about a civilian version of it, a semi-automatic version. So, yeah, I like shooting it. I'd probably rent a full auto to have some fun with it and run a couple of boxes of ammo through it, and that'd be the end of it. If I got one, if I wanted a PCC, a pistol caliber carbine in 9mm with roller delayed blowback, I'd get one from Mean Arms. When it comes to Tommy gun, I thought Tommy guns were cool. So I actually shot one and found out there's a reason this was first generation submachine gun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, calm down, because
you almost just have to pick it up to be discouraged from wanting whatever.
Yeah, and then when you discover there's one switch for semi-automatic and full automatic, and then there's another one for the safety, and it doesn't really have a magazine. Well, it has a groove that the magazine fits in, that it has to slide into the groove that's on the gun. No.
It's like putting together a puzzle.
Fun gun to rent. Yeah, fun gun to rent, but you ain't running fast mags in the Tommy gun without a whole lot of practice that I don't have time for. And I can't have short barrel rifles in Jersey, so I'd have to have a 16-inch Tommy gun, and that just looks weird. So, yeah, please, I mean, if you have that gun that's your fantasy gun that you really want to get your hands on, before you spend the money on one, especially if it's expensive. If it's not expensive, do it to it if you want. But I say take it out for a test drive first, and then it might take some shine off. Matter of fact, take it out for a test drive more than once, because the first time might be the novelty of it, and you're really geeked up. But the second time, you might be paying attention.
All right, I'm flipping gears to my own comment. You were saying something earlier in response to something, I guess, almost an hour ago. So I have no idea what this was actually in response to anymore. But I was trying not to interrupt you, so I just made like a note here, and now we're finally catching up to it. But my note was to remind me that we were talking about ranges or something about ranges or targets or something. And I was going to ask you in the audience, because it's been a while since I've even been to a range, let alone reviewed like a new range. Like the last range I went to is probably, I'm sure it was SHOT Show, but someplace I've been before that is not modern or anything. So what I'm going to say here is this something that already exists, and then fill me in. But I I know the last time I've been to something that was innovative to me was in Austin, Texas. I got a tour of one of the ranges in Austin that was brand new, and it was like a country club type of situation, you know, for high end customers type of thing, and they had like a special room upstairs, but it was all brand new, and their ranges, the indoor lanes had kind of like, I don't want to say they could dance, but like you could choose a pattern, and it would take the shuttle or whatever you call the thing would take your target away from you, turn it 90 degrees, maybe stop at 25 yards, turn it 90 degrees so that you could see it, give you 10 seconds, and then turn it 90 degrees so you saw it on edge again. You couldn't shoot at it, and then it would go down to 50 yards, turn 90 degrees, and then, you know, they had like this routine of like patterns that you could run it through, and then that was to give you, you know, more than some dynamics to your shooting at the range. And then they also had a deal where you could turn on like red and blue lights, where it would start shooting red and blue lights to like distract you and give you just like more stressors or whatever that would be. But that's about the ultimate I've seen. So what I'm wondering is, in 2024, are there any ranges where you send down either a target or even a blank piece of paper, and then in the ceiling or the floor or something, there's a projection that would show, you know, whatever you feel like projecting on the screen, whether it be a video or whether it be like a specific target, and then be able to, same way that these systems work that can read your bullet holes, you know, some kind of AI eyeball watches where you're shooting, and then maybe just records that all and gives you like a digital, you know, MP3 file or something that, you know, gives you, or MP4, I guess it would be, but, you know, gives you a version, like a video of what your scenario was, because you would never have a piece of paper, you know, you would just be shooting at a blank thing maybe. But anyway, I'm just wondering, does anybody incorporate video into an indoor range yet? And if so, how cool is it?
All right. Okay. No, an indoor firing range where you actually send the real rounds down range.
Yeah,
not
the virtual stuff.
Yeah, not that I've seen, but doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Because, like you said, I mean, sounds pretty cool. Again, with a piece of paper, you can narrow it down. It doesn't have to go out. I mean, it's almost like watching your own personal TV at the range. It could be like however big its target is, but you're watching it and you react to that. I think you're right. It sounds like fun, but I don't know how expensive not only the projectile would be for each individual port, but also for to be able to read it and give you real time feedback.
Yeah, it would cost something. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if it would be, you know, and then when you compare it to things like, what do you call that thing? The VR. It's like, yeah, or you can go into this room and shoot this airsoft gun.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense, because they're developing that at a massive rate. And it's right. Like, what's the real difference there? It's actually probably better in the what you're talking about realm, because you can add so much more to it. Anyway, I was just thinking that we were having a discussion earlier that you know, if ranges were gonna do something like that, but you're right, there would be I can't even imagine the cost. They'd probably have to put it behind some kind of piece of steel or something. But anyway, 500 said to all the stupid gun laws we got. Too bad. All the stupid gun laws we got ruined the Tech 9. That was a cool looking pistol. Not very reliable, but fun looking. I'm not a advocate. I'm not the biggest fan of the Tech 9, but I like Keltec and Kelgren and Intertech and those initial polymer guns that started it all. And that one is a particularly fun one for me because it was a real machine gun, a submachine gun that existed just because they could. Nobody asked for it, as far as I know. They just were like, let's make a machine gun. Okay, let's make a submachine gun, 9mm, and then tried to sell it to countries. But when it came here, they were like, oh, you can't sell machine guns in the United States? Let's just put a sear in it or whatever they did. And now it was an open bolt. And then it got, I don't know, like the bad rap, right? And then they neutered it even further by making it closed bolt. And that's why I think it has the reputation of being unreliable, because they took a gun and modified it and then modified it a second time. And I just think that if Culgrim would have sat down and made the thing closed bolt semi-auto from the get-go, it would have been a different gun than if it was, its actual lineage, full auto to semi-auto to closed bolt semi-auto. But again, I'm not a big advocate. I don't love 9mm or nothing. But I just think that gun got bullied by the media, and I'm going to advocate for anybody who gets bullied unnecessarily, even if they're 9mm. I don't know if you got
well, gun laws have ruined a lot of stuff in this country. Like, we just had to really fight about the bump stock and the legal battle over pistol braces, none of which needed to exist without stupid gun laws.
Good point.
If we could just have full auto and short barrel rifles. So, I mean, it just ruins a lot of stuff, and it saves nothing. It saved nothing and no one. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. It's ridiculous.
And it's a great point. I didn't even think about it from that angle. That's an excellent like another way to look at. And then I remember when I first, thinking about the Tech 9, when we first started being online. So this would have been when we were at AOL, I think. I'm almost positive this was that long ago. So this was in the 1990s still. This was the last century. We're online, and there's not that much stuff online back then, compared to now at least. And we knew there wasn't that much stuff online because you'd still go to a magazine or a catalog. Like the online was just a fraction of what was available out there. But I remember finding bins and bins. Somebody who I forget exactly without thinking about it too hard what the lineages of Intertech and Intratech and the company, and then eventually it got sold, and then somebody bought, and then somebody bought it, and somebody bought it. And man, I can't even remember the name of those clone companies, but anyway, the same kind of thing happened with the Macs, where these companies that went from open bolt to closed bolt were essentially selling their tooling and their rest of their parts. So they all started out with, let's make a gun. And they put a bunch of tooling together, and they got some investors, and they bought a bunch of materials, and they started making guns. And you make guns in batches. You fold stuff, you rivet stuff, you assemble stuff, and then you final process and sell it, batches at a time. You do 100, you do 100, you do 1,000, you do 1,000, whatever. And when these companies get shut down and sold, they've got X amount that are flats, and X amount that are bent, and X amount that are welded, and X amount that are completed, and X amount that say everything on them got the wrong company. And then when the new company buys them, you're going to find, 1,000 of them said the first company's name, but that's crossed out. And now the new company's roll mark is on there also. And then they started using blanks, and now they're only the one roll mark. But then they had to buy their own blanks, and then it changed. So when you get into like the collecting of all these kind of things, that one's got such a neat history. And there was a time where I think they were rejects, but they had the polymer receivers pre-serialized in, like, what a Gaylord is, like a pallet with the cardboard coming up, that they use for shipping stuff. So it's a 4x4 pallet that's, I think, 4 foot tall with the cardboard. So they had these things, like 4 of them full of receivers that were being auctioned.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Oh, it's called a Gaylord?
Yeah. I'm going to go look up why. But yeah, that's what they call them. Like, I only know that because when you buy stuff off of Amazon, that's what they call it, like a Gaylord of XYZ or whatever.
Oh, golly gee willikers. I am, wow. Please look that up, and please let it be real.
Oh, no,
because I haven't. No. Reason I'm saying it is because, I'm a child. And I have not been so happy to find an alternative form of word that I use to insult people since I learned faggot is a bundle of sticks.
Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of thing. Let's see. Has evolved a generic term for any pallet-sized box. They were originally manufactured in North America by the Gaylord Container Company, thus the name. Similarly to how Kleenex is in tissue and Band-Aid or adhesive bandages. So it's just a guy named Gaylord started making 4x4 pallets, and now that's what Amazon calls a 4x4 pallet that's 4 feet tall.
The Gaylord family. The Gaylord family legacy is okay, cool. That's great.
Dude, you gotta know, like, you had to have had like General Gaylord or like Corporal Gaylord or something. but like some officer with some name like that, where
Mm-hmm.
you had to deal with it. You had to say it, and you couldn't ever react to it, and ever, like, you would never was over your shoulder or something. So everybody just had to act like, yeah, okay, Major Gaylord, no problem. We'll just keep walking like nothing happened.
It just keep it moving, man. It's just the way it's gonna be. Just wow. Hey.
Okay, so anyway, they had
hello, Genie.
They had four of those things for sale of these receivers, and I just wanted to buy them just for the sake of buying them because they were like cheap. They were like $200 or something crazy. So anyway, that's the history of those guns. Is like, can you imagine somebody bought those, and then somebody said, "Oh, let's buy parts kits, or let's make up our own parts, or whatever." And was that gun going to ever shoot as well as whatever the full auto Kellgren actually made in Sweden or whatever? No. Like, I mean, like, so that gun has a reputation or whatever, but like I say, it's a 9mm, so it's got that going against it. It's one that I just don't like that much. I mean, I like the Mac 10 a lot because we made it, but the Kellgren made that thing in Sweden technically, so it's not our gun. And the only reason I do kind of appreciate it, I guess, even though I don't know if that's even too positive a word, is because it got such a bad rap by the media that I have to defend it just because they hate it so much, right? No, we're not going to sacrifice something just because it's kind of goofy.
Yeah, exactly. I just I've been cleaning up my room. If you heard a lot of stuff going on, and I was freaking out because I was going through my rifle bag. I have an M16A4 clone right here, and I'd removed the broom handle vertical grip because it was getting in my way to a competition I was shooting, and I thought I'd lost it. And I didn't realize that I'd put it back on for another competition that I shot with it. So I just came across it in my rifle bag when I took it out and checked. Because this is actually original. Was it PNR, PNS? Yeah, PNS products, rail, and everything that came with it. Yeah, dude, I totally agree. The media did a job on different things, everything from the Tech 9 to what was the other thing? Black Talon bullets, Black Talon rounds. It was just because the media said something and everybody bought into the bull crap and you destroyed a product line. Almost like, what was the name of that company? We
Tactical.
Is that a 22? Yeah, We Tactical. I have one of the patches here that they gave me.
Yeah.
Hmm?
I think I butchered the name.
They destroyed that company.
The ones that made the small scaled down AR-15.
And they still have it. They changed their name to Mountain something, and then they went after them again because somebody found out their new name. It's such garbage, and the media just plays along with it because, again, like I posted, the media is the propaganda arm of the anti-gun movement. Nobody cares about a 22 that you can actually get to be a single shot 22, but it looks like an AR. What do you think? It's just ridiculous because they never really put you what they think can happen with it and allow you to retort. They'll put it on, something like a stupid show of theirs or a clip that they'll play as if there's some facts involved in it with Gavin Newsom spouting fear, and they'll destroy a product and not care. I met the people. I talked to them for 2 years in a row, and they're a really nice family that started this company up with a great idea. And just to have it destroyed by politicians because they wanted to push an agenda that had really nothing to do with their product is disgusting. And I was glad I had a platform.
Laid a bunch of shit on them that never actually happened. They just assumed a bunch of shit might happen and started running with it, as opposed to having an instance that they could exploit. They just created a situation in their head and then ran with that relentlessly.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, so if that's true, how many school shootings use the Ruger 1022 that looks like an M1 carbine? I mean, we've had since 1965 for it to take place, and it hasn't happened once. And that's what the 1022 was built to look like. There's none. There's none. They made up something. The media went with it. And when I try to explain that the media can't be trusted, those are some of the examples that I try to use. I'm like, they make up scenarios, they spoon feed it to you continually across all networks, and people buy into it because you've heard the lie so much that it becomes the truth.
Now, I'm not disagreeing because I believe that's essentially what we're experiencing or have experienced. My question is, because I don't think I've asked this one to anybody, let alone to you in this show, realistically, right? And I'm pretty optimistic, but trying to be realistic about it. Guns are normalized. So I could read off the folks out there that are doing efforts to make guns more understandable and change the dynamic of this unawareness that the antis play with. So in the not too distant future, hopefully, guns are more normalized and people are comfortable with them the same way people are comfortable with hot coffee or a fast car, or I don't know, anything else that could be perceived as dangerous. And we live in a more chill world because of it, which I think is a great extra benefit of once guns are normalized. It's like a pretty major thing for people to kind of get over the fear of. And I think we one less thing on the let's argue about list, right? And that's a pretty major thing to take off the list. So in a future where guns are normalized, and this is a theoretical future, but hopefully a realistic future in the near future. In that world, this is the real question, does the media lay off guns and go after whatever else sells next? Like, oh, we're worried about sharks on the beaches, or we're worried about an asteroid hitting the earth, or whatever else fear can sell. Is this an opportunistic thing for them? Or do you really feel that they have a core hatred of individual freedom, illustrated through gun ownership, and they're going to go after it even after guns are normal? And I mean, for real, like, not just, what have you ever thought about that? Do you think?
I've never thought about it, because right now there's a total war against guns, and what I'm working at, and others obviously, or normalizing firearms ownership. But all we have to do is look at what happens if it becomes normalized and they started throwing politicians out that voted against your rights or even suggested, any kind of gun control. Let's just say we had another summer of love, and we had cities burning, and more people bought firearms to the point that they had to use them because it got out of control, but then it came back in control. You know what I mean? Just like it did
because
before.
Of the guns, right? Because of the guns, though, and that was the perception.
So because of civilian. Yeah, because of civilian ownership of guns, some high visibility self-defense took place, and now guns are normal, and there's severe pushback against anti-gun movement. The media will go back to whatever crap they were pushing prior to it. So you'd hear a lot more stories about the polar caps melting. You hear a lot. They always pushed fear in our whole entire life, for most of our lives. I mean, I might not have noticed when I was younger. It seemed when I was younger in the 70s and early 80s, it didn't get as bad. I think the fear mongering got ridiculous, but it's only because I'm thinking about my lifetime, and I'm sure somebody born 100 years ago would say the exact same thing, because they had yellow journalism. They got us involved in the Spanish-American War when it was unnecessary. So right. I think the media pushes and hypes up stuff to sell papers. They did it back in the day, and they do it for ratings now. It's just they're mercenary. I don't think it's ever been an organization that just was worrying about the facts and presented it to you in an unbiased way. My old partner used to say it.
But they're also, it sounds like you're saying they're not like on some overall agenda that guns are and the antithesis of, like, it's just that guns are the meal ticket of the day. Everybody's on board with it, so let's hate guns. But as soon as that changes, they're off to the next fear-mongering moneymaker.
Yeah, I think independent, like people will have their own opinions about guns, because there's stories I'm sure these reporters don't agree with politically or don't agree with personally that they do a story on, positive or negative. It doesn't reflect their personal opinions. But if all of a sudden their audience went, yeah, we don't want to hear about this, and your story is bullcrap, and all of a sudden their ratings drop off, they'll shut up, because they're about ratings and getting paid. And the minute you affect that, it affects them and what they report to you.
Right on. And I don't know if obviously it's a theoretical situation anyway, because we have to have guns normalized for that to happen or what. But appreciate it. Patriot added, with the media's constant barrage, is there a way to get something normalized? Is the blitz? Is there going to be? So are they going to do a blitz? I guess, and is anybody going to listen? I'm not sure. It got glitched there at the end there. So is there a way to get it normalized? That's a great question, I think that I would love to see actual discussions on this, because aside from Professor Yamane, who does the guns are normal thing, and I think he's amplifying that from one of the liberal gun owner type of organizations that came up with it, or somebody came up with that. But I think that's one of the most useful kind of catchphrases we got out there. But is there a way to get something normalized? Yes, because I look at two things. Drunk driving in my lifetime, I remember people saying one for the road. Like, I'm going to take a drink and take it with me because I'm fucking got a long way to drive. I'm going to drink a beer on the way. And I knew people that did that. Like, I knew that. And then those drink holders in cars are because people had like a like a mixed drink sitting there in a glass.
Or beer.
Yeah, beer sometimes, but I mean, I knew people that had like a scotch with ice in it, and they're driving because you could drive with, I forget what the level was, but unless you were being reckless, nobody gave a shit if you were drinking. So drunk driving was something that they essentially decided was a scourge, and I don't know if it was or not, honestly, because I know that we're not always told the actual truth. Sometimes it's just a way to get people behind something, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. But whatever, Moms Against Drunk Driving, as far as I know, wasn't evil intent or like big media behind it. It was just a bunch of moms who kind of figured out, hey, we have the technology to get this word out there, to create awareness, and they did, and it became a pretty neat thing. And I don't remember anymore. It would be interesting to think about this, when it all fell down with, or where it came down with the anti-drug shit that happened, because there's been quite a few anti-drug campaigns. But in amidst all, I think the drug stuff happened with Nixon, so way before we were born, there was anti-drug campaigns. But the anti-drunk driving, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, I think everyone agrees that it was successful. And that was something that came about and happened. I don't remember anymore what years it was, but I was in school. So like while I was a kid, it happened, it accomplished, and then it's gone. Like, drunk driving isn't even a thing. In society today, if you go around acting like a drunk driver, almost everybody, including your friends and your peer group, is going to go, don't do that. What are you doing? Don't drunk drive. It's stupid, right? Like, nobody's going to advocate for it. We haven't done that for suicide. That's a loss. But now the other one is marijuana. So I used to have this conversation in the chats whenever we started having live chats, and it kind of bothers me, or it's discouraging to me, that it doesn't come up more often, because the same way that we see constitutional carry, I don't like to call it permitless carry, constitutional carry in 29 states, that's a whole bunch of people with good intent and with responsible lives, and just so much authentic, like, concern behind it, and good effort, like, actual accomplished good effort. The normalizing of carrying of guns is what created that. So yes, I guess I'm also using that as an example. Is there a way to normalize something? Well, hell yeah, we have 29 states with constitutional carry. Every one of the 50 states has concealed carry. We've normalized gun carrying at this point. But the same way that that's happened, look at marijuana. There was medical, and I don't even remember, because this all kind of happened relatively quick in the last years that we've been online. But there was medical marijuana, which sort of led the way and is, one layer, I guess. And then there's the recreational marijuana. And name anybody who's marijuana, except for like a bunch of hippies, maybe Grateful Dead concerts or something. Like, name any kind of organization that's national level that campaigned, that did that. Like, there's nobody, no rich person said, we need to have marijuana. Like, no big marijuana company came along and said, like Coke is it or whatever. And, some campaign to normalize root beer or something. Like, that's just drugs. People wanted to smoke marijuana. They said, let's do it. And I guess enough people in enough states said, let's put it on the ballot. And then enough people voted for it. And then that momentum happened. But I look at that, like, marijuana has been normalized. I mean, I guess somebody could disagree with me, but seriously, can you at this point? There are a couple of holdout states that act like marijuana is some kind of issue, but there's just an overwhelming number of states that don't give a shit about it. And it's essentially normalized to where people that would have freaked out about it are either doing it or could care less about it, right? And I look at that campaign, or I don't know what to call it, because I don't think it was organized. I mean, there must be somebody who's making money on marijuana, obviously, but I don't believe that it was like some manipulation of a big government thing or a manipulation of a big industry thing. I think just it was a thing that time came and the world changed to where we don't have the wool over our eyes. We don't have, it's not so easy to tell somebody something and they don't have any options to learn about it. So anyway, I think the world changed and that became normalized. Now I'm probably missing things, maybe motorcycles, or I'm trying to think of something else that's dangerous, like those sports where you jump off of stuff, like with hang gliding and stuff. Some people would consider that like suicidal, right? Like at some point people were like, is there something wrong with you? Why are you jumping off of things with just a parachute? Nowadays we're like, hell yeah, that's the Mountain Dew lifestyle. Like that's normalized. You jump off of something. If you don't have a camera, it's kind of weird because we're expecting to see it. But you know what I mean? Like they think there's lots of things that are normalized. Now, is the media against those things? I guess that's the big question. They're definitely against guns getting normalized. I don't know if the media was even against marijuana. They were probably for marijuana being normalized, so they probably helped with that. Anyway, I've been ranting for a while. That's my answer to that one. What do you think? Is an original question here. Is it possible to get normalized with the media the way it is?
The media changed when the money stops being behind the anti-gun movement. And again, that'll change when you get a significant pushback that the only way these people can stay in power is to have big money overtly behind them instead of trying to act, if there's a significant pushback against people violating your civil rights and using lies to get there. So that's the truth that I want exposed. You can have and not have a firearm. I think if we normalize it, and I think it would take, again, another threat like 2020 with the police standing down, and I think we're going to get there because of politics and all the other bullcrap, and the fallout from COVID and the policies that passed during it. I'm seeing it in my department. There's stuff that's coming that's the result of what they built on in 2020. If civilian ownership and self-defense gun use goes up, because you can hide the numbers all you want, but people know what's happening in their towns. And when it starts happening and the local news reports on it, it can become a national news story, especially with the media, social media we have. Things can spread. You know how many people were killed so far? Over 100 people have been shot this weekend from the 4th of July until today in Chicago. I'm not in Chicago and I know about that. When it starts happening in smaller cities, I think that's going to help normalize firearms ownership. And then when there's pushback from citizens going, yeah, we're tired of your bullcrap. You're not protecting us. We have to protect ourselves. And I think that will happen. It's going to be more normalized. And then all of a sudden the media is between if you're losing eyeballs, if people aren't watching, then you're going to lose sponsorship. And if you lose sponsorship, you're not making as much money. So they'll stop. So it'll take work. And it also is upon us to stop gatekeeping firearms use, firearms ownership, and stop making this thing a political issue when it's not, and not having people on the range, because I still get people telling me, why am I reaching out to liberals? They're only going to vote Democrat anyway. Good. I need people that vote Democrat to actually start fighting for our Second Amendment rights and picking Democrats that do, because the Democratic Party was not always the anti-gun party. They weren't. And they need to get back there. And it's all about politics and how we approach it and how we recruit it. And there's just no set way. We need to fight on all fronts. That's what I feel we need to do. And we can help normalize it and everything else will fall in. The American people are powerful. We really are. But we need to take this back. And it doesn't need to be a political party thing. It needs to be a us thing. Just like we got together during disasters. And no one asked, during 9/11 when they were trying to drag people out of rubble or help people, whether they were a Democrat or a Republican. They were just helping people. And we have to do that again when it comes to our rights, because you can see it's been made political. And we need to go, wait a minute, this is my safety. So, yeah, when you have some ladies defending themselves and it becomes a big enough news story, because the Kyle Rittenhouse, they played it up as almost everything horrible because were able to play politics with it when it wasn't. They even lied about what it was. But when you have people being able to defend themselves and you can't paint them in the corner as being right wing or anti or racist or anything, it's just people trying to protect themselves, and it becomes a big enough news story, it's going to push some garbage out. It's going to push some garbage out. And I think it's coming because of bad policy moves we made uh, in the past. Because police departments haven't recovered. How many? I mean, right now, just scrolling through Instagram, I saw 4 different departments advertising for help. I mean, it's bad. Now, when I first got out of the military, you had to wait. There'd be like 4 openings, and there'd be almost 200 people applying for the job. Now it's almost the opposite. You have hundreds of openings, and not even half as many people apply. It's going to become a problem. And they're lying about violence. They're lying about the numbers, but they're still victims. And people are going to be able to defend themselves. There are a lot more cameras around. There's a lot more chance of us seeing victims fighting back. You have podcasts like the one I was on. You have active self-protection. And you have many, many channels on social media that will show people fighting back. Let's not act like something can go viral and actually change the political landscape if it connects with enough people. It will take all that. It will take all that to change things up. And the media will get in line if they see that they get paid that way.
Patriot followed up with the drunk driving thing is different. The median was not pro drunk driving. Yeah, except for the people that enjoyed drunk driving. Nobody was like, I'm going to vote you out. Well, I guess some people, but you're right. It wasn't like the majority of people gave a crap about drunk driving. Most people probably thought it was stupid and reckless, which is, you're right. It wasn't like a hard sell. I'm just saying, I guess I look at that as an example or an example of a non-government push for something like a social cause that did get a lot of support and did accomplish something in our lifetimes is the thing. Like, because there was there's probably countless campaigns and issues, but that's just one that I think hit the national scene that was actually successful. And it wasn't even anti-booze. Like, they didn't care if you were driving. They just said, get a designated driver. Or they didn't care if you were drinking. They just didn't want you to drive. So they said, get a designated driver, but they never said, like, quit drinking. And I just, so I give them a little credit for that. But I don't know nothing about it. If it was a bunch of communists that ran it, I'll quit using it as an example. But it is a good point. It is a different, and I'm not saying they're completely parallel as much as I think it's possible for us to change things. I think we definitely live in a world where, look at our diets. We never really talk too much about it because that stuff fluctuates so much. But people joke about, is egg good for you or is egg bad for you? There's a lot of that PR. There's the food triangle and blah, blah, blah. And then all the different kinds of ways to eat. I won't even say diets, but, just different methods of eating, different points of view on it. And in reality, we all are young and then we have different metabolisms. We get old, we get injured, we have different situations in life. So there is no one thing for anybody, but to suggest that, any one government agency or any company is going to tell us the best diet, we think that's absurd. So they're kind of saying that with self-defense. They're kind of saying that with our choice to recreational activities. They're kind of saying that when they say guns should be demonized because they're so reckless and violent. Fuck them. If they're going to try to say sugar isn't good, we can cite a million examples of where sugar's fine. It's the corn syrup that's bad, or sugar's fine just in moderation, or sugar's fine, just don't do XYZ, don't not exercise or whatever. Anyway, so I'm getting off on tangents there, but anyway, we're 3 hours in. We're got a ton of people. That's why I haven't even tried to slow down because we've had more people. We have almost 100 people listening right now, which is a lot for our show on a Saturday afternoon. So without a lot of people interacting, it's weird. I'm definitely used to the YouTube folks like Patriot is doing, being part of the show and giving us stuff to chat about. But I will end it here so that we're not spending all of Tony's knees, probably in the middle of, it's like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock for you already. So I appreciate you taking most of your day with this one. His last thing says, if there's just a lot of people out there that could care less on top of those that are scared and ignorant, it's just hard to get over the hump of all the negative that's being pushed. I agree. I would say I always throw out the platitude, I suppose, if that's the right word. If it was easy, everybody would have done it already. So we will accomplish this, and we will appreciate it all the more. And I think that's a good thing, as opposed to it just sitting there and we just picked it up, because then we take it for granted. We don't appreciate it. So I think that having a little bit of a fight isn't necessarily something I want. I think it's a waste of resources. But I think what we'll end up with is resilient and strong gun owners at the end of all this, and more united than we've ever. I don't think we were ever ununited. It's just that there weren't a lot of people that felt that guns were for them. Like, there was a bunch of people that were told for a long time, guns aren't for you. Essentially, everybody in a city was told guns aren't for you, right? If you live in the country, maybe you could have a gun, but not if you live in a city. And that's changing. And that's, you know what I mean? It's going to be tougher and tougher to have some narrative, like who's allowed to have a gun type of shit.
Look, we're winning. All right. We're winning as Americans. Again, I don't believe in the political party thing because it cuts off half the country if we keep pushing it as us versus them. But you can definitely point out that it's Democrats' national platform and needs to be changed. But we are winning because there are lots of Democrats that are buying firearms. Our move is to get them to go, hey, you need to find somebody that's for your rights that's a Democrat. I'm not trying to recruit all these people to the other side of the aisle because I live in Jersey and a lot of the Republicans we have here aren't pro-gun. So I can't see, hey, be a Republican so they can vote against your gun rights. So that's my whole thing. We're winning. We need to keep this up. We need to invite more people that don't agree with us politically for most things, but they believe in the Second Amendment, and we got to get them to start voting for it. They can have other issues and they can have other stances. My issue is Second Amendment civil rights and our civil rights as a whole, we need to fight for, and everything else we can figure out in the ballot box. But we got to get rid of people that are fighting for our actual civil rights. Then after that, everything is just opinion and it can swing like a freaking pendulum. I don't care. Just don't mess with the top 10. All right. There we go. Leave everything else can be fought for, but let's make sure you have the ability, to have that Bill of Rights apply to all Americans.
Let's be free to have the
and
discussion.
We're getting there.
Being told what we can discuss.
Exactly. And we're winning. We have to participate. We can't take our hand off the wheel. And just voting is the minimum you can do as a citizen. You have to do more if you want to see a change.
I don't know when this came in because I unstarted, so I don't know, but it was definitely probably an hour ago. We've been live for 3 hours, so it's a while ago. But Tactical Muffin said stock food, water purification, ammo, wool, and blankets. I honestly have no idea what we were talking about when they made that comment, but yeah, I mean, I think having prepped, being prepared, being prepped or whatever for, I mean, seriously, like an airplane could fall out of the sky, a chemical truck could be driving near your home and fall over, and they evacuate. We've had in Tucson, like some kind of, I think there's giant pipelines of gasoline that come through next to I-10 or something, and one of them busted open and poured gasoline into like a neighborhood. You can't anticipate something weird like that happening, let alone weather. And then the potential civil issues that, something could happen in a neighborhood, or I don't know, just all kinds of weird stuff. Since there's no way to know, preparing, I think, is a great idea. I think there's something to be said for the economical side of it. Like if you're going to buy, I don't know, let's think of something you prep. He said water purification. So water or something. If you're going to buy water, maybe it's just as cheap to buy the 500-gallon thing as it is to buy the 100-gallon thing. And now you got a little bit bigger thing in your backyard, but you've also got 500 gallons of water. I mean, sometimes it's just as simple as little changes like that. Ammo, though, buying 2 or 3 boxes at retail versus buying 1,000 round once a year and only shooting 500 of it. So now buying 500 rounds at the 1,000 quantity, you can go shoot and probably, I don't know how everybody shoots at a different pace, but you can shoot a lot more ammo for the same money. You're putting 500 away for your preps, and it's an economic thing. Yes, you're buying your whole months or years worth of ammo at one time, but at the same time, you're paying less for it. So if you can afford to do it, I think prepping is an awesome idea. But I don't know if you have anything to add to this one. Is prepping different in New Jersey than it would be in Arizona, you think?
Yeah, we can't stockpile water that runs off our roof here. It's illegal.
Are you serious? I've heard of places
yeah,
like that.
Yeah. Prepping is important. I have to do a better job of it. Um, the stigma that people put on it has always been there. Excuse me, has been there in my lifetime. Because before it was just called living life and being smart. But now with consumerism and the ability to buy groceries, and people think somehow that would never get turned off. You know, a truck driver strike in 3 days will have your store shelves empty.
Yeah, we've seen
People
that too,
don't
right?
understand. Exactly. People don't understand how life works. So if you're prepping, you're ahead of the curve. And I don't even mean having a basement stocked with food. I mean having an extra week's worth of food, having a month's worth of food would make sense. And when people tell you about it, I'm like, have you ever lost a job and then had to find a job? Imagine if you didn't have to worry about paying for food during that job search.
Mm-hmm.
How much would that save you and allow you to actually pay your rent or pay your mortgage if you have to choose between putting food in your mouth and paying a bill that'll eventually get you evicted? Well, you're going to choose food. Well, what if you don't have to? So it just makes sense. But another thing I would add to this is build a network of people, of friends, of places you can go. Because what if you're at work and your town has to be evacuated and you don't live in that town? Well, you can't go back. Well, what do you have in your car for prep? Or do you have an alternate location or a friend's house you can meet at? Or are you dependent on relatives or people that live in the same town you live in? Well, you shouldn't. You should have friends in other places. You should also have a place to go, maybe.
And be a friend for someone in another place. That's the other side of that, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I know, and I'm blessed because I live in Jersey, but I have friends over a lot of places, and people have opened their homes to me during what I went through in the last couple of years. And I was able to live in different places and take what's in my vehicle and move. So you have to have that built up. And I think a lot of people that I see think about, well, I'll prep and I'll, stay here. But what if you can't? What if something happens? What if there's a big fire? What if there's a disaster, either natural or man-made? Like you said, gasoline spill, a dam breaks, or whatever, and you have to unass with whatever you have or whatever you can carry. Where do you have to go? Because if you're just packing your stuff up, your 3-day bag, your go bag, but you have no destination, then you're just homeless. That's what you are. So I think that helps is think of perhaps not only as being prepared for disaster, but having somewhere to go that you can set up and be taken care of and actually have these conversations with that place you think you're going to go. Like, I know I can go back to Virginia, to my mom's, to my aunts, to my family that lives in VA, to family that lives here in Jersey or friends that lives in PA. Like I know I have other places I can go to take a few days before, I get like fishing after 3 days. Fishing, the guests got to go. Like, I know I can stay for more than a couple of days to get established. Do that also. Be that friend, be that person. And you may have to practice or go hang out or just having the things and thinking you'll know how to use them is a mistake. Use them. Use that camping equipment. Use that tent. Figure out how to actually tie that knot. Like, it's a lot involved in prepping other than just buying things. And I think a lot of people just stop at that because that's the sexy part. Buying things is the sexy part. Training, working with them, and building relationships takes work.
That's a good point. And we're also conditioned or programmed to find pleasure in the purchase, right? Like, we're capitalists. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it is something we should be aware of that we're kind of programmed by, since we're little kids, to want the next or to want the coolest or the next usually or more, the collection of. And I'm guilty as that as anybody. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but yeah, just be aware of that, right? That it's not a value we're just instilled in yet, but we can normalize. One of the ways to normalize is to pay attention, work with intent, right? Know what we're spending our time doing. intentionally.
Oh,
Patriot threw
and one more thing about prep.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
want to throw one more thing about prepping, and it may seem, I'm aware. I am 100% aware. The better shape you're in, the better off you'll be in an emergency. And this is coming as a severely overweight dude that has a problem with his knees. I know if I was in better shape, I'd be more of an asset to myself. Being able to move and being able to move quickly or do stuff without pain. It's just there. Do yourself a favor if that's part of your prep, if that's just life. Being in better shape is better than being out of shape. That's the least insulting way I could say something like that, especially coming from me.
I hear that, and I totally agree. Patriot threw out a $9, $10 super chat. Really, let me know if get any leads on cannons. Like I said,
That's awesome.
Aren't handy. I definitely appreciate the money. Thank you for that. I'm taking all the super chat money, and we'll buy Tony. We'll go out to eat or something next time we're hanging out together. But unless it turns out to be shit tons of money, way more than a meal, then we'll like do something. But, at this point,
Hey, we'll be in. Cheryl told me I could speak. I'll be speaking in Arizona in 2025, February. See you there, bro.
Okay, well, I'm thinking SHOT Shows before that, but then also, are you going to Gun Rights Policy Conference in San Diego? You're still up in the air?
Not unless they fly me out. Not unless they want me to speak and fly me out. I'm going to Goals, but you're not going there in August.
I'm not going. I just haven't figured out a way to pay for it, but I'm hoping. Hey, quit yelling at me. Dog's being mean to me. Decided that we've been chatting long enough, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, I'm not going. I would still definitely like to go to Goals for a couple of reasons. I'd like to see the inaugural whatever. I'd like to go to the NAGA in Dallas on the 25th as well. And that's tough. It's just that my van's front end isn't great. Like if the van had a nicer front end, what do you call them? The rubber up front essentially is all old and it's all, it's like lean into one side. So I go through tires really fast and I just don't want to do another big road trip on that. I've got a couple of tune-up issues. But aside from that, I'd definitely be in the van driving because anyway, I would definitely. I'm really, really close, but without sponsorship, I'm not going either. But anyway, so I guess maybe SHOT Show will be the next time we hang out. But if something changes, we do live in a crazy world, and this is an election season, so you never know what kind of stuff goes on. We've seen some crazy events happen in the past, and this year is definitely not going along any normal path. So,
yeah, that bingo card is really weird for 2024.
But the last thing I'm going to bring up then is just to kind of reiterate something. I didn't want to interrupt you when you were saying it, but you brought up something effect of vote for the Democrat or like you were saying something about people being concerned that you deal with people who are like adamant Democrats. I'm assuming make a big point about I'm never going to stop voting Democrat. Like, hey, go for it. This is a country you can do whatever you want in. But they're saying that great, but just be sure to vote for the Democrats that are voting for what matters to you, right? And that's where it kind of enlightened me a little bit. I've seen a couple of things. It wasn't just one thing. It's a couple of things, and I won't get into the specifics 3 hours in, but a couple of things have grinded my gears or whatever they say recently. And I kind of thought about it, and as well as anybody that there's more than one liberal gun organization. And if you count, I think people would count you technically as a liberal gun organization because you're not the typical conservative messaging type of thing. So by default, you're either neutral or not, or liberal, and you're literally called diversity shoot. So I think you would probably get put in there, but with a bunch of other stuff that's like adjacent to liberal gun owners or there's the liberal gun owners is a big one. And then there's, what's the other one? There's the liberal gun owners and there's liberal gun club. Thank you. And those are just the two that I can think of. And that means there's at least 10 that I don't know of. And then if you count things like the ones that are even more fringe that, like the FPC of that area, you know, that kind of stuff, then they get to be even more. Anyway, whatever. The main thing is they've all existed since at least, I'm going to say 17, but maybe even 15. And now I was already had this conflict or confrontation with them years ago, that and I understand now because of that confrontation that they're not there to convert gun owners to be liberal or liberals to be gun owners. They're there for people who are already liberal gun owners to gather and hang out together and have a place that they can be comfortable, because they didn't feel comfortable or welcome until then. Or that's fine. Like, that's fine. I'm not going to debate somebody on that. Now that I understand what the organization is for, now I'm going to say years later, when are we going to get an organization of liberal gun owners? And I don't mean to say either one of those two groups, but I have to use those words to describe people of what I'm talking about. But people who are liberal, who are also gun owners, when are we going to get a group of them? And I don't care what they call it or who they were made up of, but whose job or whose goal is to then either seek out, support, or reform Democrats to be gun owning Democrats, the politicians, I mean, because being a gun owning liberal, awesome. I don't give a shit. Be a gun owner who has pants on instead of shorts. I could give a shit. But if you're then going to be an advocate, don't just advocate to the gun community, because I don't care. I might kind of like Never Enough Ammo. He says this all the time. Like, telling sci-fi people to be woke is stupid, because the sci-fi people have been woke since the early days of most sci-fi is woke. Like, it's just it's like a part of being sci-fi. Like, there's no genders, no like trips or like hang-ups. There's no racism and shit. It's all about aliens, and it addresses all kinds of controversial topics. Sci-fi is pretty intellectual, and it's pretty leading edge when it comes to that shit. So nowadays, coming into 2024 and telling sci-fi people that they're racist is kind of tone deaf. It just shows that they don't pay attention to everything that's ever happened in sci-fi. So I think it's the same thing with guns and everything. You can be concerned that your gun shops aren't catering to your shit, and you make new gun shops. Awesome. I don't care. Like, if there's a gun shop that doesn't cater to cowboy shooting, then make a new gun shop that caters to cowboy shooting. Nobody cares. But at the same time, when are we going to see one, like I say, that now tries to convert the politicians? So the politicians aren't such assholes. And I'm not saying they have to. I just think it's a missed opportunity. And I'd love to see a world where there's politicians who get pressure from the Democrat side to be gun owning Democrats, because there used to be like that. Like, I remember in the 90s even, when the NRA would come hard at something, there would be Democrats that are like, hey, I own guns, I'm all for guns. They'd have the but, except for, but whatever. They say they were gun owning. Like, they don't even say that anymore, right? So anyway, that's one of my gripes is, like, I'd like to see the liberals who claim to be gun owners who claim to be liberals do something to push those politicians to do something. But the way you said, vote for Democrats who do, well, I should shut up, because what are they going to do? Like, either run for office, like very few people do, so I have to shut up and sit down. I don't run for office either. Or be aware of and support those Democrats that do. And there's no way that a Democrat's ever going to do that unless there's a demographic that says something like, I'm a Democrat gun owner, and makes that, what do you call it, like public. And then we got to wait for the system to work. Like, I'm always one to advocate for giving the system time to do stuff. Well, okay, I'm going to give it some time. Now, I'm also going on record 3 years in, hey, I'm saying it. So if nothing happens another 8 years, I'll be bitching again. But I will give it some time and, like, let it cook. Because, it's not like it's going to happen overnight. And I shouldn't expect, the Liberal Gun Owner Club came along and now a second one came along. 3 weeks later, we should expect Democrats to have guns incorporated into their policy. Like, that's unrealistic, right? It's going to take some amount of time. And I think you kind of hit it there. When you bring Democrat, I think, and this getting back to what you originally said, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but when you bring Democrats in who are going to stay staunch Democrats, who cares? Like, okay, great, you're a Democrat. Let's shoot guns together. Let them go off and be Democrats again, because that's the seed, that's the beginnings of the Democrats coming back to guns. And it's not going to happen like, oh shit, there's two of them now. Democrats brought it onto their agenda. It's going to take some time. So anyway, I'm going to cool my jets a little bit based on that. So it took me a long time to say that, but I appreciate that.
Yeah, 100%, dude. It's funny because it's like when I agree with them, I'm a liberal. When I don't agree with them, I'm a conservative. When I'm like, look, bro, I don't fit into your boxes, and stop trying All right, I don't fit. I'm big enough. I don't fit into most things, so cut it out. I'm not going to fit in that box either.
I like to think, at least I
fine.
don't encounter anybody that tries to just say there's two boxes anymore. Almost everybody I know can appreciate that there's multiple boxes and can handle that I just stand in a box that's over here and doesn't take part in that. And then I'll say why, and then they'll be like, okay. And hopefully that's another seed to like, hey, quit watching that game. If you don't watch it, they'll quit playing it. Like they're only playing that game because it makes a bunch of money because you're watching it. Quit playing it.
Yep. And one of the things is actually have the ability to have that conversation. And I can't be one if I call people mega idiots and libtards. Well, I just cut both of them off. No one wants to hear what you have to say after that. So let's just talk like real damn people. And that's what I work at with Diversity Shoot. And I think it actually works because people aren't a monolith. You don't only think in what do you call it? Binary. You think of everything has a nuance. If you're in the box and you're comfortable in the box, that's just kind of weird that you will go with everything a political party has to say. I'm like, political parties' platforms are come up with by a committee. Like they had to wheel and deal to get those points across, but somehow they nailed everything you believe in.
Yeah,
how is that even possible?
Super normal, like you're super common. Like
yeah, like they had to figure that out and make compromises, but they just nailed you. Okay, cool, I guess. But yeah, dude, it's we're getting there. We're getting there because there's more groups like mine, like Maj, like I'm almost calling the DC Project still, Women for Gun Rights. There are more people like the Liberal Gun Club, like Operation Blazing Sword and Pink Pistols. None of that crap existed 10 years ago. None of them. Prior to 2015, that didn't happen. And we got a severe boost with COVID.
In 2 years,
and I'm saying organizations. Yeah, right? Wow.
In 2 years, you're allowed to say. Actually, in a year, what am I saying? 2 years. I'm thinking it's 23. That's next year. You're going to have to not say 10 years. Yeah. Or like next year, I should say. Dude, be able to say 10 years. Yeah.
Wow. I've been doing this for 10 freaking years. 9 years. But that didn't exist. So give it time because we didn't get where we were in 10 years. We got where we are. And you can go back to 68, 69, Gun Control Act. When they started putting this, you can go back to 84. Like where do you want to start at? Or you can go back to 36. That's how long this anti-gun push has been going on a federal level since 36. We're fighting back now and winning fast with Supreme Court cases and with groups and organizations that don't fit inside that box and are not the stereotypical gun-owning Republican MAGA hat-wearing dude. We're winning. Don't gatekeep. Welcome people in, even if they're from another party, because we got to get that party on board of the Second Amendment, and that's it. Don't bring up other topics. Leave it alone, because those topics are what they're using to divide us, and they want that. They need that for people not to listen to you about their civil rights. They need you to bring up, fill in the blank, whatever hot button topic is outside of the Second Amendment. They need that. That's why media is pushing a lot of the stuff. I mean, look at the flags some people have on their profiles. Why? You're talking about wars. If we're talking about the wars in between Russia and Ukraine, or Israel and the Palestine, I'm like, these are things that have been going on well before you were ever born. Why are you so passionate about it right now? You know what I mean? Because you could have been passionate about it in the early 2000s, 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, up to 1948. You could have been passionate about that. But now they're pushing it as a divisive measure so you don't notice what's going on with your other rights and what's going on elsewhere. It's just a divider. Stop falling for it. Concentrate on your civil rights and go from there, please, because we're winning and they hate that.
And I would say it would be cool to have a panel discussion with a bunch of people who are paying attention to this, because I definitely agree with you that we're winning. And I would add, they know it, and we can know that they know it based on what they do, but also what they don't do, what they're scared shitless to do, because things that we know their playbook, essentially, they've only done so many things over and over again. So the fact that they're not doing any of the things and they've had to try some new things indicates that they understand that they've got, I always say that they're, flailing, their arms are flailing. They're no longer swimming. They're hardly even treading water. They're sinking. And some of this last stuff is just kind of desperate attempts.
Desperation. Yep.
What desperation. And maybe things that they would have never tried before. But anyway, it would be neat to have a discussion about that, but not necessarily 3 hours in. I think I was going to throw one thing out there just since we're super long anyway. I guess I was looking to see if Brooke has her show scheduled, because Brooke does Suicide Prevention Saturday each Saturday afternoon. That's what we're going to recommend you go check out after this show. That's a great effort that happens consistently every single week. Brooke Cheney from A Great Start Shooting School in Connecticut hosts about a half an hour or less, or sometimes 20 minutes to half an hour conversation that's live, hosted on YouTube and some other platforms. And it's an opportunity to talk about mental health, normalize mental health conversations, talk about suicide prevention, and to keep a focus on things that are beneficial for our conversations amongst ourselves for multiple reasons, and obviously with others, people that are anti, to give some insight, and so that we can be more comfortable, so that they understand that these are important issues for us. I think it's, and I keep saying it, and I have yet to be challenged on this, it's the most effective thing that's happening consistently for Second Amendment over the years. Happens every single week, and it's she's the only person that's even in the realm. And Walk the Talk America is adjacent, but Brooke is actually hands-on, enabling individuals to become either awareness or activists or people that create awareness. Anyway, we do this show on Saturdays intentionally so that I can open it up with my giant channel and Tony's following on the X to focus people over, funnel people over to her show. She's fighting the logarithm that people would talk about because it can't determine or differentiate between informational talk about suicide prevention and negative stuff. So it really smashes into her ability to grow as a channel. So we're kind of doing what we can, knowing how the internet works, to create awareness of her show, bring people over to her show, and encourage people to link to her show. In fact, I'll put a link to her channel here. Like I say, she didn't actually post a link to her show yet. She hasn't created it, I guess. But what I did notice is Meet the Pressers and Riding Shotgun with Charlie had Edgar on like an hour ago. So right in the middle of this, we quirked them, or they quirked us. So this is our time slot. They're the ones doing the quirking. I didn't even know it was a thing, though. I thought it was, they usually do their shows like on a weekday evening.
It's not live.
Oh, it was a recording? Okay. But I noticed I think right over it.
Yeah, I've been on the show a couple of times, and I think it's recorded.
Patriot said, good discussion, even though Tony's camera has been crooked. Well played. Well played. So,
what?
Patriot in the dark is.
Yes, I know. It got me for a second.
Okay, so, and for those who are watching, they know what's up, and those that don't should pay attention to the show more often and join us more. But thanks again. There's a lot of people watching. We've had a record viewership today, mostly from people on the X who refuse to actually comment for some reason. I'm getting used to it, but I'm still going to comment on it because I don't do programming. I'm not here with an agenda other than we don't have to have an agenda. We're allowed to be individuals, and we can work together just fine. In fact, we usually flourish and all prosper when we work together. So, and it's not always perfect, but in the long run, we flourish and prosper. Actually, I've been watching a John Wayne movie about the people that went out to, one of his first big roles was a wagon train or whatever, going out to Washington State and all the adversity they had along the way between weather and the mountains and the, but mostly I'm sure it was miscommunication with, all the different tribes between, I forget where they started from, Kansas or something. But anyway, so there's lots of stuff to deal with out there. And it's never going to end. So the best thing we can do is get comfortable with dealing with it, and ideally do it in such a way that it's obvious to the next generation and something that the next generation is also comfortable understanding, that this is a game that we win by being in the game, not a game that we win by scoring enough points. Right? I don't know. We're going off on tangents there, trying to see if we wrap it all up after 3 hours. But with that, why don't you just take the rest of the show to let us know what's going on with Diversity Shoot, what you got going on, and then we'll wrap it up.
All right, cool. We have a lot of people over at X. This is what I need you to do. Please share my pinned post about the Diversity Shoot, not only the one coming up at We Shoot down in Lakewood on July 18th, but the next one coming up at Union Hill Gun Club in Monroe, New Jersey. We Shoot is a brand new venue for us, so it's in another part of Jersey, so I need as much coverage as I can from you guys to let them know we're coming. It's very important. Please do that. Please help me out by doing that. If you want to help out by donating, please visit diversityshoot.com, and you can donate using PayPal, you can donate using Cash App, and you can donate using, I always forget one of them, PayPal, Cash App, Venmo.
Okay.
There's the ways you can donate to what we do. You can also join our Patreon. The second is for everyone on patreon.com. We really appreciate it. It helps us fight the good fight in New Jersey to bring in more firearms owners. That's why it's called Diversity Shoot, because it's from different perspectives, different politics. It doesn't make a difference as long as you're a human being. This is a human right of self-defense, and that's what we're fighting for. So if you want to help us out, please do. We have events all year long, twice a month. I'm also going to be at the very first conference of Gun Owners of America, and it's going to be on August 18th. I really wish they'd put more things out so I could advertise for it. All I have is one poster about me being on the veterans panel, but I'm also going to be a speaker, and I'm also on the diversity panel. So that's what I'm going to be doing in August. If you want to help me out, please make donations because we need funds for that too. Thank you very much for allowing me to come on here every week and talk about what we do. If you want to hear the Firearms Radio Network, Firearms Insider Gun and Gear Review podcast, I'm one of the co-hosts on there every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we actually do a review on a firearm, a knife, or some kit. And then we discuss new things that were released into the community, new products. And this week, we'll be doing a knife review with a Civivi Elemental. And we'll be talking about some of SIG's new releases from the SIG Next release party that they had about 2 weeks ago. We'll be talking about the new P365 fuse that just came out. That'll be one of the products we're talking about. So thank you very much for allowing me on the show and to talk about this every week. I really appreciate you. And thank you for all the people that wrote in and made donations. Awesome.
Well, that was Patriot. But yeah, thanks for Patriot for that. And thanks again for jumping in. Because, again, we're not trying to offer a script or a point of view here as much as interactive conversation. So thanks to everybody who was part of the show today. And man, I've been kind of stalling here, hoping that Brooke would post a show so I can link to it. I don't even see Hillbilly's show. Usually I try to link on YouTube to the next live thing that's going to happen, just because why not? We got a little bit of momentum here, but I'm not going to be able to do it. So we'll put a quick commercial up here for Gizzards' show. His show happens on Fridays. And then we'll throw a commercial up for our store. If you want to support what we do by being a capitalist and buying stuff at our store, we do appreciate it. I'll throw a link up on the screen for that while it goes. But yeah, thanks, man, for joining in every week. And you know what? I was just thinking about it. We didn't do a show last week. So this is essentially everybody's getting their money's worth. Like, even though we didn't do a show last week, they got a double show this week.
Nice.
You're welcome.
This is Earl Benson reporting from downtown Topeka, where Gizzard Gary is rampaging through the city. Authorities have asked the public to stay indoors. They believe he will tire soon and need a nap. Gizzard Gary can normally be seen on Foul Territory Friday nights at 7 p.m. Central. Wednesday, 8 p.m. for the channel members chat. Stay safe and give him the bird. Earl Benson signing off.
GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com.